Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Development Property Committee on Tuesday, January the 16th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. As we gather this morning, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the First Nations. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history. We are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Evelyn, has roll call been taken?
Yes, thank you, and we have chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, then I will need a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting held on November 14th, 2023. Moved by Councillor from Greater Madawaska, seconded by Councillor from Town of Arnprior. Are there any additions, corrections, or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. So at this point, we will move to our delegations, and I will turn it over to Ms. Markwood to introduce our delegation from ACL and CNL.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. It's been a busy start to the new year for CNL, with a number of announcements, including the most recent being just last week with the approval for the development of the near-surface disposal facility in Chalk River. But today we're joined by members of Atomic Energy of Canada Limited's government-owned, contractor-operated, or GOCO for short, Procurement and Contract Renewal Strategy Department to discuss the procurement process to secure a new contractor to manage Canadian nuclear laboratories for the next 10 years from 2025 to 2035. AECL recently published their draft statement of work for the 2025-2035 period and are welcoming comments from the public, stakeholders, and communities until January 31st, 2024. To provide us with an overview and more information about the process, we are joined by Maude-Émilie Paget, Director, as well as Jason Cameron, Vice President of Indigenous Stakeholder Relations. Over to you both.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Melissa, and thanks, Mr. Chair, for that land acknowledgement. I am joining you today from Ottawa, which is also the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. You did the land acknowledgement. I'll say that I was actually snowshoeing on the weekend with the new snow, and I'm reminded that they brought us snowshoeing, and it was my opportunity to partake in that on the weekend. I was reminded of that. Look, Happy New Year to the committee. Melissa, thanks for organizing us, and I am Jason Cameron, Vice President, Indigenous and Stakeholder Relations with Atomic Energy of Canada Limited. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Maude-Émilie Paget, to walk through an update on the procurement process, and then welcome a short question and answer on that process or other developments. As Melissa mentioned, it's been an interesting start to the new year. So, Maude, over to you.
Thanks, Jason. So again, my name is Maude-Émilie Paget. I'm the Director of the GOCO Procurement and Contract Renewal Strategy for ACL, and I'm going to attempt to share my screen here, and people can confirm if it's working. I think so. Yes. Okay. So today we wanted to, Melissa kind of set us up quite well. We wanted to provide a bit of an update on the procurement process to renew the contract for the contractor to manage Canadian nuclear laboratories beyond 2025. For those who have been around for a few years, you may recall that the government of Canada led such a process starting in 2013, 2014, which led to the implementation of the government-owned contractor-operated contract in 2025. So we're gearing up for the end of that contract and setting ourselves up for the next contract. So my goal today is to provide you a bit of an update on where we are, kind of what to expect, and where we would seek feedback and input. So I have a slide on land acknowledgement, but it's been done before me. Like Jason, I'm in Ottawa as well, and thank you for accommodating us participating virtually. and I'm located on the land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. So I'll kick us off just by talking about the procurement process. I've kind of set it up a little bit. So in 2015, Canadian National Energy Alliance, which is a consortium which today is made up of Atkin Realis, which was previously known as SNC-Lavalin, Jacobs Engineering, and Fluor, to manage Canadian nuclear laboratories. So the contract with CNE, or Canadian National Energy Alliance, expires in 2025. So we've launched the process to continue the management of CNL beyond that date. From our assessment, the GOCO model is working well. There has been significant progress made by CNL on various areas, including decommissioning, waste management. There was a mention of the approval for the near surface disposal facility. But importantly for the Chalk River site, the recapitalization and investments at the site for the future of science. So as a bit of a reminder, the governmental and contractor operated model is meant to enable CNL to be the continuing enduring entity and the operator of the site, including the employer of the workforce and the holder of all of the contracts. What changes or would change during a procurement process is who owns Canadian nuclear laboratories. So they're kind of the green box at the top right. Currently, that is Canadian National Energy Alliance, and we're looking to see if a new contractor wants to come in. And what essentially they do is bring in a vision for CNL, and essentially bring in a senior management and leadership team, as well as a board of directors. AECL is a federal crown corporation, so we own the assets, we provide the funding, we oversee the performance of that to ensure alignment with our objectives and those of the Government of Canada. As we look for the 2025 to 2035 contract, we're really looking for CNL to consolidate work in 3 missions. So you'll see here on the right-hand side, there's a map. So the assets of AECL and our responsibilities go beyond the Chalk River site, which is more of interest to this committee, obviously, and potentially the nuclear power demonstration site just up the river in Ralston. But we also have sites and responsibilities in Manitoba with the Whiteshell Laboratories, in the Northwest Territory, in Northern Alberta with the Northern Transportation Route. There's a science group located in Fredericton working on cybersecurity. We have responsibilities in Genesee 1 in Quebec, Douglas Point, next in the Bruce Peninsula, as well as the Port Hope Area Initiative. So the contract would cover all of these sites and assets. And as you see on the slide, it would cover kind of what we consider to be our 3 main missions, which is science and technology, really strengthening CNL's role as a national and internationally recognized nuclear laboratory, continuing the waste and decommissioning management mission, and cleaning up our legacy waste. And then continuing on with the Chalk River revitalization. There's some exciting new buildings and yet more to come in the coming years. What that means for CNL in terms of the procurement process, I've mentioned CNL is meant to be an enduring entity. So CNL itself is not changing. The vast majority of employees there will continue to be employees of CNL, and CNL remains their employer. What may change is the ownership, as I mentioned, of CNL, and we would expect the new contractor to bring in a new senior management team. AECL's one of our priorities to ensure that there's stability going forward and continuity. So we have a vested interest in ensuring that the ongoing projects and priorities of CNL do not change, and that will be our focus in the coming years as well through the transition. And we do expect going forward over the next kind of 10 years for the level of the workforce to be relatively stable. There are key initiatives that are currently underway, and we expect those to continue, and those require a lot of people and subcontracts from the community to be able to deliver that. In terms of our procurement process, we are we're in the second phase. So we did, in 2022, we did a bit of a market study through a request for expression of interest. Last fall, last spring, we launched a request for pre-qualification, so essentially looking to pre-qualify interested bidders. And we are on track to launch our request for proposal this spring, which would then lead us to a period where bidders prepare their bids, another period where we evaluate said bids, and then the signing of a preferred bidder agreement, which would lead us into a bit of a transition phase where there's overlap between the incoming and the outgoing contractor, all leading us to September 2025, where the contract would change hands. Just to give you a bit of an idea of what we've been looking for into contractors, this is a bit of a high-level list of our pre-qualification criteria. You can see all of the details on our website. The request for pre-qualification is available on the ACL's website at the link there. But essentially what we were looking for is to make sure that people who were engaging in the process had qualification and experience to manage this type of site and this type of scope from experience from either here or elsewhere. So we were looking for people with specific experience, for example, in decommissioning and waste management, specific experience in science and technology, specific experience in managing large unionized workforce, managing change management, engaging with local communities and local stakeholders to advance projects, engaging with Indigenous communities as well. And in addition to that, we looked at security requirements, financial capability requirements, as well as integrity certification. So a bit of a fulsome look at the interested bidders who will then be able to participate in the request for proposal. In terms of our schedule, I mentioned that we launched our request for pre-qualification in the spring. We're still part of that process, and that we, as part of that stage of the procurement, we are engaging with both members of the public, local communities, and Indigenous communities on some aspects of the draft contracts. We have published the draft statement of work that we expect CNL to be responsible for the 2025 to 2035 period. That's been posted on our website, and we're inviting comments from the public on that until the end of January. We've been having site tours with qualified respondents, all leading up to the issuance of the request for proposal in the spring, which I will note we do not expect to be a public document. In terms of next steps, and then I'll turn it over to the committee for any questions or discussions. So we are seeking feedback. So I mentioned that the statement of work is available. If people have comments, we certainly welcome them. If the committee or the county more broadly has comments, we would absolutely welcome those. In terms of looking at what's, is there anything that's missing? Some areas of priorities or focus that are not well captured. And we've also been doing some targeted engagement with Indigenous communities and nations that have an interest in our sites. So I'd certainly be interested in hearing any questions you might have or your thoughts, and Jason and I are unavailable to answer any of those.
Thank you very much, Ms. Page, for an excellent presentation, and Jason as well. And I'll turn it over to committee for any questions. Question from town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation. Lots of exciting things happening up at CNO. In terms of sending this out for request for proposal, is there any indication that the three present companies, ownership group, that they are planning to reapply or renew their contract?
So we are not disclosing the names of those that have been part of the process or those that have qualified at this point.
I see a question from the town of Arnprior.
Thank you, Chair. Bree, just to confirm that even with the new ownership, the staff at CNL in Deep River Correction Chalk River will not be changing, correct?
That's correct, yeah. So there's almost 4,000 employees of CNL. We would expect all of them to remain employees of CNL. They are absolutely needed to deliver the work and to ensure continuity and safety of operations. Where we do expect some changes are in the very senior leadership cadre of the organization. So essentially the president and CEO and his or her vice presidents. Those are typically individuals that are brought in from the contractor. So those we would expect to change. Everyone else essentially stays employed by CNL and continues to deliver the good work that CNL is doing.
Thank you.
And the warden, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And just very quickly, when I looked through your website, there doesn't seem to be any commitment to local investment in terms of community functions. And I know, and this might be unfair, but I know that when I see the investment in the community, it seems to be concentrated in Deep River and Chalk River, where they sponsor events. And so, and I think part of what the attraction for CNL is the employee group spreads all across the county. So I'm curious if there is any kind of a measurement as to how much funding is poured back into community to support community ventures. And I don't mean business, I mean community activities that build a sense of community and attachment to CNL, but also CNL's attachment to our community. And then secondly, again, I don't see anything about growing local businesses in a hub model. So is that something that, I think that was part of the conversation with the original GoCo in process in 2013 and 2014 when we had all of the various bidders coming around and making presentations to us. I think there were 5 groups at that time, and they were all promising a variety of measures to build a hub around CNL to promote local business. And then also there was going to be a series of investments with education and in the community. So I'm curious, is there any kind of a measurement of that in this, or has that been abandoned?
So what you would see, and the comment is well taken. We'll have a second look to make sure that the language is as clear as possible. Is in the draft statement of work, there are requirements on CNL to have in place public engagement programs and community engagement programs that focus on the local communities. Generally speaking, we didn't define local communities because we do recognize, as you point out, that yes, there is a host community, and that's an important community, but there's also other communities around, and certainly the employees come from all of those local communities. So there is a requirement for CNL to have such a program and plan in place, and typically those plans would be submitted by CNL to AECL for approval, and that's how we would make sure that CNL delivers on that. What I would say is, in addition to that, there typically are, so the contractor itself, so separate from CNL, may also choose to invest some of its own resources in the local communities. It's been done to some extent in here, not as much as what's being done in the States. And what I can say is we are looking at best practices from the United States and other jurisdictions to see how can we leverage those and bring those into our contracts, because part of our process is also kind of revamping our contracts to make sure that they reflect how we operate now, but also reflect best practices elsewhere. And the question of the contractors investing their own resources in the local communities is something we're specifically looking at.
Okay, thank you. Because the language, as I see it, only talks about, proper supply chain management or something. So there doesn't seem to be anything specific about a hub or incentivizing or encouraging local local development. So because I went through, if I'm looking at the right document, it's 36 pages and it's stamped draft.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had to look at it
Okay.
last night. Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions, comments? I just had one just to follow up on the warden's comments. Currently, CNL has a good relationship and partnership with the community when it comes to education co-op placements in order to grow the workforce locally as well as outside of our local area. Is that something that would also continue with a new contractor?
Yeah, yes. The short answer is yes, absolutely. So CNL is expected to continue all of its ongoing programs and outreach. Certainly more broadly in the nuclear industry, the access to the workforce and investment in education, even at the with the younger crowd, with STEM, the focus on STEM is something that we're all focusing on, and AECL is as well. So when we look at what CNL is doing, we look at their work in this area, and we would absolutely expect them to continue that going forward.
Thank you very much. Oh, and now, Warden.
Yes, if I could just offer a compliment. I'm very impressed with the commitment to working with our First Nations and Indigenous population, and so I really like what I've seen in your document towards the end, page 30 on. So, it's very encouraging. So I wanted to offer that as a compliment. It's very encouraging, and I fully intend at some point to steal some of this for other documents, so thank you.
I'm seeing no other questions or comments, so thank you both once again for your excellent presentation and the ongoing process of finding a new contractor or completing the process sometime I guess towards the end of the year or 2025. So thanks again very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to participate.
Great. Thanks. Have a good day.
So at this time, we will move to the department reports, and we'll start with Director Davis.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, everyone, for the first Standing Committee of 2024. I think we'll be the guinea pig for the budget deliberation, as the other directors and acting directors are here to see what goes on at this committee. So starting on page 6 of your committee package, a number of information items that's resulting from the Trails Committee that was held on January 10th, just a week or so ago. Item number 1, staff is still working with our partners of Lanark County and Frontenac County to purchase the sections of the K&P trail that Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority currently owns. So as you see in the report, the expected cost to clear title and do surveys around $67,000. We're not quite there yet. But we wanted to make sure that the Trails Committee and this committee is aware that we're still processing it. You see the draft documents as part of this package on pages 13 to 37 about the lease agreement if we move forward with this purchase. It's a very important purchase for us. Again, we've been doing this or looking at this as a staff level for over a year now, and we feel like we're getting closer, so that's why this information is very important to be in front of this committee in 2024 as we move forward. Item number 2 is the cell tower in the town of Arnprior. Just as a reminder, when the county purchased the CP rail corridor, part of that purchase was a telecommunication tower in the town of Arnprior down by our paramedic station. And with that being said, we're not in the business of towers and tower maintenance, and so we've been given direction from the Trails Committee to see if there's any interested parties to purchase this telecommunication tower. When we did purchase it, we had two companies, Bell Canada and GoZoom, that had assets on this tower, and currently there's only one company that has assets on this tower. So since that time, we've had a number of different telecommunication companies look at this tower to see if we are interested in selling this tower. And working with Taylor Hanrath and his team, we wanted to make sure we follow our policy, our disposal policy of GAO2. And so that's why we're bringing this to your attention to say we do have some interested parties looking at this tower, and to ensure that we are following the policy, we have engaged our legal team. And the intent is not to sell the land, but just the tower and the rights onto the land. So as we move this file along. Item number, or C, or the third item from the Trails Committee, is the purchase by the Ministry of Transportation, or MTO, for a section of the Algonquin Trail just outside the town of Renfrew. So MTO wants to do the twinning. We're supporting the twinning exercise from Armpire to Renfrew, but part of the twinning exercise from MTO is to clear title and to purchase lands, including the lands that the county currently owns that we purchased from CP. So if you're aware, just coming from Renfrew to the town of Armpire, just outside the town, we go over a bridge. That bridge is going over the Algonquin Trail. So the intent would be from MTO to purchase, if not purchase, expropriate these lands from the county of Renfrew. So we want to work with MTO. Their proposal is, instead of having a bridge in that location, 2 box culverts, 1 for each lane section. They've done this before on Highway 148 towards Quebec, and it's worked quite well. Less maintenance for us too as we move forward. So again, staff has engaged our legal team of Borden, Ladner, Gervais to make sure we're doing the correct things, and looking at our policy of disposal also to make sure we're following our disposal process as Taylor and his team works through this. The fourth item from the Trails and as information, and this is on page 7 of your committee package, bylaws governing trail use. Good or bad, we do have 2 bylaws, one for the K&P Trail that determines use of the K&P Trail, and one for the Algonquin Trail when we purchased it and when we built this out. Again, the K&P Trail, this bylaw was created back in 2000 when we purchased the K&P Trail starting in 2002. So it is not in sync currently with the Algonquin Trail bylaw. It's the K&P Trail is silent on the use of dirt bikes on the K&P Trail, so dirt bikes are allowed on the K&P Trail. While for the Algonquin Trail, dirt bikes are not allowed at this time, and staff is reviewing those processes. But what we want to do and what we brought to the Trails Committee is just to ensure and have some continuity to create one trails bylaw for county-owned trails. So it's a good move forward. Part of this is to engage the public. And what you see in the committee package, we're engaging the public through our Zen City platform. And of interest, with Tina and Taylor and Anthony Hobbs, our trail technician, set this questionnaire survey up through Zen City. And currently, as of this morning, we have over 1,200 submitted surveys from the public looking to see or looking to provide their comments about the trail system that county owns. So very good engagement so far. I think Taylor mentioned that he's had double or triple the public engagement compared to his master plan, or his transportation master plan. So I'm not sure which is, sorry Taylor, but trails may be more important than roads. I don't know. But leaving at that, so that's item number D for information. Item number 2 in your committee package on page 8 is the record of decision from the Canadian Nuclear Laboratory, the near surface disposal facility. As Melissa mentioned in her introduction to AECL, the GOCO model, just last week they approved the near surface disposal facility to move forward. Again, it won't happen right away. As you see in the media releases, this is just one of the phases as part of this process, but it is the good first step. Again, looking at social media and some of the news releases, not everyone is on board for this, but overall it's a good news story for the County of Renfrew. This will create some jobs to move forward. And on page 51, as you'll see on the committee package, is a nice letter to our warden from Joseph McBurty, I guess, the president and CEO, thanking the County of Renfrew for their support throughout the years and throughout this process for this near surface disposal unit. So, Chair, those are the information items from the report.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. So we will go back to information item number 1, and this is the Trails Advisory Committee update. And 1A is the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority K&P Trail acquisition. Comments or questions? Yes, Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Jason. If this purchase should go through, is there a lot of upgrading that needs to be done to any of those sections of trails?
Through you, Chair. So this section is 6.7 kilometers, is a little less than 7 kilometers. It's currently being used for remote access for some of these private landowners. So the rail bed or the trail bed is decent. We would still have to do our typical trail build of brushing and grading and adding that stone dust material and some signage. I think the overall cost, and looking at Taylor as we move forward, it still would be on an estimate of, again, a high-level estimate to improve the trail as a trail, about $20,000 per kilometer. And again, I'll kind of look at Taylor to see if I'm on the right track on that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, then item number 2, or item number B, sorry, is the cell tower in the town of Arnprior. And Councillor from town of Arnprior.
Thank you, Chair. To Jason, my apologies for not giving you the heads up. If we sell this property, how are you going to have access by the company that owns it? Because there is no road to that particular tower. There's a parking lot, but that would be about it, unless they go on the Algonquin Trail, which, thank you.
Through you, Chair. The intent is not to sell the actual physical land that's the tower's on, the tower and the power supply station that's there. And as part of the agreement, they'll have full access over the trail to get to the tower.
Any other comments on item B? Item C is the purchase of property by Ministry of Transportation, and that's in regards to the twinning of Highway 17. Councillor from town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Jason. You mentioned the box culverts, and I'm assuming that would be for the new lane they're going to build, and that will allow traffic to go over the trail. Is there intention to leave the bridge that's presently there in place, or are they going to take that down and put box culverts on both sides?
Through you, Chair. So at early discussions and early designs, it'll be 2 box culverts, so that bridge will be removed. Their approaches to the bridges will be lowered to affect the box culvert, and so I think the end result will be 2 box culverts. Again, early in designs, it could change, but that's the answer.
Any other comments on item C? Item D is the bylaws governing trail use. Councillor from town of Greater Madawaska.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I know that the bylaws for the Algonquin and KMP are different in regards to motorcycles. Being part of the KMP trail, we get a lot of people on enduros and dirt bikes using the trails, which bring a lot of tourists into our area. So when going forward with this, is the thought pattern, I know it's at the primary stage, but is the thought pattern looking at having the access of motorcycles, enduros on both trails?
Through you, Chair. So the idea has been brought to the committees, the Trails Committee, a number of times from different organizations to try and get the County of Renfrew to allow dirt bikes or enduro bikes onto the trail. Again, you're perfectly correct. Very early on in this stage. I know Taylor has brought to the Trails Committee the idea of allowing dirt bikes as we move forward. I think the key aspect of this is getting the public input, which we're getting from Zen City, to see what the public wants. And then we'll bring it to the committee to see if that's their wish. The challenges in the past with dirt bikes have been, and again, this is the past, some of the dirt bikes couldn't be insured, it couldn't be licensed. That's changed now. So as a staff member, and maybe again, looking at Taylor to provide any additional comments, it's not off the table. I think it's one of those things where the ATV club, the Renfrew County ATV club, part of their trail pass system allows dirt bikes on their system, not in the Algonquin trail, but on their trail system. So there's a disconnect there, and it's creating confusion. Taylor, maybe?
Thank you, Jason. That is correct. And through RCATV, they do, as you mentioned, issue permits to licensed insured dirt bike users. So we would work with them on that as well, following up on the public consultation.
Yeah, thank you very much, because we are a tourist area, and the more tourists we get, whatever their vehicles are on, as long as they're insured and able to go on the trails, would be great. Thanks.
And Councillor from Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, just another comment on the dirt bikes and enduro bikes. And I know most people that use the Algonquin Trail follow the rules, but it seems, just in my experience near the town of Petawawa, it is the dirt bikes that are abusing the rules, especially the speed and the blowing of the donuts and that type of thing, ruining the trail. Has there been any discussion about if these dirt bikes and enduros are allowed, the maximum size, I guess, of these things that we would allow onto the trail?
Through you, Chair, an interesting question. We'd have to review what the specs are out there for the different machines. We don't have a full spectrum of the sizes and the speeds they could be doing. We'll look at that as we move forward. Again, it's not set in stone that they're going to be allowed. And I agree with you in your comments about the town of Petawawa. Typically, when we opened up the trail in Petawawa, it was local people, local younger adults, and maybe teenagers, I guess, and especially with the bikes not being insured or licensed, we're creating the concerns you've heard. And so even if we allow dirt bikes, typically these young people won't have them insured or licensed, and they'll get charged, which is a kind of a flip benefit to this.
Councillor from Laurentian Valley.
In the trail that's to become part of the Algonquin Trail, have motorcycles been allowed on that trail?
For clarity, Chair, the trail that's going to become the Algonquin Trail, sorry, little bit.
Yeah, that 6.7 kilometer portion of the trail. Has it been used extensively by motorcycles?
So that's part of the K&P trail. So right now the K&P trail allows dirt bikes. So yes, it's been used. So that's why the transition, whatever the transition and the use will be a challenge to make sure whether they're allowed or not in the future is going to be a challenge in that section for sure. If that answers your question.
Thank you.
I guess the one other question that we've also heard on trails is the electric bikes and electric scooters and even golf carts. Is that being considered as well?
The challenge for us is for electric bikes is accessibility. So if any of these vehicles are used for accessible purposes, typically they'll be allowed to be used on the trail. Golf carts are a different matter, and typically they're not insured or licensed to be roadworthy. And so right now they're not allowed on the Algonquin Trail. We'll look at this to see if any organizations, haven't heard of any organizations that would allow golf carts on roads and or trails. But if that's the case, we'll look at it. But right now, golf carts, no.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on item number D? Seeing none, then item number 2 is the record of the decision for the near-surface disposal facility. Questions or comments? I see none, so I'll go back to Director Davis for resolutions.
Thank you, Chair. So on page 9 of your committee package is the start of resolutions, and the first one is the land use agreements. William Jones and Nicole Fisher, and I'll read the recommendation and then go give the background after. That the Development and Property Committee authorize the Chief Administrative Officer Clerk to approve a land use agreement for encroachment on the Algonquin Trails lands by William Jones and Nicole Fisher for the purposes of a new driveway crossing.
Thank you, Jason. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Laurentian Valley, seconded by Councillor from Greater Madawaska. Background, please.
Thanks again, Chair. So on page 52 to 55 is the application, and this may seem familiar to this committee. This application was brought to this committee and approved at this committee for a different landowner. So Mr. McBurney, Terrence McBurney, brought this and requested this trail crossing on Wrangell Road. Staff have vetted this through, and part of the agreements that we've had in place and proposed to have in place only lasts with the landowner. It's not on title. And so what happened in this situation, Mr. McBurney sold his house to the new owners, and the new owners wish to have a crossing agreement with the County of Renfrew over the Algonquin Trail. And so with that being said, it's the same application. The committee approved Mr. McBurney, and now we're wishing for this committee to approve this request. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Comments, questions? I see none. All in favor? And that's carried. Please go ahead, Director Davis.
Thanks again. Continuing on page 9 of your committee package for the Town of Arnprior, I'll read the recommendation that the Development and Property Committee authorizes the Chief Administrative Officer Clerk to approve a land use agreement for encroachment on Algonquin Trail lands by the Town of Arnprior for the purposes of a new below-grade water main crossing, and further that the costs associated with this encroachment be waived.
Thank you, Jason. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Town of Arnprior, seconded by a Councillor from McNabb-Braeside. Background, please.
Thanks again, Chair. So on page 56 and 58 is the application from the Town of Arnprior, and what they're looking for is to gain access underneath the Algonquin Trail for a major main water line. And so staff through Taylor and his team has reviewed this and see this as workable for us. And as part of our agreement encroachment policy, we're allowed to waive some fees, and in this situation that the Taylor and his group and operations group believe the waiving of the fees is applicable at this time, Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Back over to you, Jason.
Chair, so on page 10, we have items number 4, 5, and 6, all to do with the budget and the draft budget. So, Chair, I'm wondering if you'd think to sever these 3 items until the end of our reports, so we have a fulsome discussion at the very end. So we'll have our individual divisional reports from the managers, and then come back to these 3 items, if that's all right with you, Chair.
I would agree that that's a good idea. If we can move through the other items in the report, we take a quick break and then come back to the budget. Is committee okay with that change? And I see nodding ahead. So, okay, then we will move to Ms. Markwood.
Not quite, Chair.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. So no, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we still have one item under bylaws.
My apologies. Yes, we do. So
no apologies needed. Page 11 is bylaws, and we have amending bylaw for investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP. And the recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council amend bylaw 93-21 to execute an amending agreement number 1 with His Majesty the King in right of the Province of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure, to extend the County of Renfrew and Ontario Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, or ICIP, COVID Transfer Payment Agreement, TPA, I shouldn't say COVID, but anyway, we'll revise that until December 31st, 2025.
Thank you, Jason. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor from Town of Petawawa, seconded by Councillor from Greater Madawaska. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So at this point, we will move to Ms. Markwood and the Economic Development Report.
Thank you, Chair. And we are on page 89 now with the report, everyone. So first up, this just follows on the presentation from ACL, which is the release of the procurement process for the government-owned contractor-operated agreement for Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. And just as a reminder, public consultation is being accepted until January 31st at the end of this month. And just to remind committee that council in October of 2022 did send a letter to the Minister of Natural Resources just in support of the GOCO process and reminding the Minister of the opportunity to provide input and requesting that level of employment be maintained, there be investment in the campus, community development and science, and waste management. And that was part of resolution number DPCC 22-10-92. Number 2 on the report is just an update on the Economic Development and Strategic Plan. So December 14th, we had a working session with the consultants. We are just finalizing the draft plan now and putting some finishing touches on that, and that will be presented to committee in February. Number 3 on Taste of the Valley. So we wrapped up our last Taste of the Valley event of 2023 in December, and that was the holiday edition held in Pembroke. We had over 1,700 people attend with over 60 vendors and great attendance, and vendors had great feedback because this was the last holiday sales just before the holiday season, and so it was a great opportunity for people to pick up some of those locally procured and made gifts for their loved ones. We will have a full report on all of the 2023 Taste of the Valley event series at the February meeting, but just as a reminder, we do have the dates set for the 4 locations for 2024, being August 10th in Barry's Bay, September 7th in Killaloe, September 28th in Petawawa, and October 12th in Cobden. There will be a holiday edition. We haven't set the date and location because we wanted to finish the 2023 holiday edition and survey vendors, and so we'll be making a decision about that and expressions of interest to host for that in the coming months. Number 4 is the Ministry of Natural Resources announced some funding for the local forestry sector. So on December 1st, the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, Graydon Smith, along with MVP John Yakubuski, made some announcements in Eganville. The warden, as well as Chair Brose and Councillor Murphy, as well as some county staff, did attend that presentation. And it's great to see some investment by the province into our local forestry sector, including Laverne Heidemans, who are receiving $120,000 to study the increased use of underutilized hardwoods to produce biochemicals and other products. Roseburg Forest Products will be receiving $100,000 to improve the supply chain resiliency, support forest sector diversification, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by exploring energy production using forest biomass. And one that I did forget to include in the report is Ben Hokum and Sons in Killaloe are receiving $119,375 to increase the use of underutilized and unmarketable timber and forest biomass and support the production of advanced bioproducts like pyrolysis oil, insulation, and plastic replacement products. Number 5 is the unfortunate news about the Arnprior Aerospace closure. So that was announced on December 18th. They are going to be closing the manufacturing facility in March of 2024, citing financial difficulties and economic changes, and that will impact approximately 60 to 70 employees. Number 6 on the report is the year in review from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. So you will see attached as Appendix ED1 is just the year in review report from OMAFRA outlining all of their initiatives and accomplishments supporting the agriculture and food sector and rural communities over the past year. Number 7, this falls back to a previous presentation by the Pembroke Airport to County Council. You will see attached in the report an update from the Pembroke and Area Airport, and so we are going to be providing more regular updates to committee and council just to keep the lines of communication open and so that everyone's aware of all the great activities and initiatives that are happening at the airport. Number 8 is just a reminder on some funding programs that have been announced. It's a busy funding time right now in terms of deadlines. So just as a reminder, the EV Charge-On program, that deadline is January 31st at 5 p.m., and that is to support the installation of publicly accessible charging stations in communities with a particular focus on rural. Number B is the Tourism Growth Program. So FedDev Ontario announced the Tourism Growth Program in November of 2023. The deadline is February 29th of 2024, and that is a fund that supports Indigenous, non-Indigenous communities, governments, small and medium-sized businesses, as well as not-for-profits to grow and develop local tourism products and experiences. Number C, Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership and positioning the fruit farming sector for growth. So this is a funding opportunity to support agricultural producers in the fruit growing sectors, particularly with tender fruits, which are apples, wines, grapes, that type of, or wine grapes. And that fund is getting used up quite quickly, but there is the wine grape stream that is going to open in the next coming months, and those are all projects that are to be completed by December 31st of 2026, and that will hopefully go to support some of our new and newly opened and growing wineries in Renfrew County. Number D, a new announcement from the Renfrew County Community Futures Development Corporation is their community development fund that they've launched. So that is a 50-50 matching program with eligibility of up to $4,000. And that grant supports projects that address economic priorities, support the business community, have a significant and measurable impact, support community capacity for economic development, et cetera. And that is open to not-for-profits and governments organizations. And there's no deadline for that. That is based on first come, first serve when the funds are all used up. And the very last on the funding announcement program is number E, which is the Rural Economic Development Program delivered by OMAFRA. That's a very popular program here in Renfrew County for a lot of our municipalities, and we have been advised that that will open at some time this month. And so once that's released, that will include information on eligibility and priority focus and that things. And I will end it at that, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Marquardt. So we'll go back to information item number 1, the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited government-owned contractor-operated procurement process. Comments, questions? Item number 2 is the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Item number 3 is the Taste of the Valley Holiday Edition. Great to see that it was very well attended and a great addition to the Taste of the Valley locations. Item number 4 is the Ministry of Natural Resources funding announcement for the local forestry sector. Item number 5 is the Empire Aerospace closure announcement. Item number 6 is Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs and the year in review. Item number 7 is the Pembroke and Area Airport update. Item number 8 is funding announcements, and A being the EV Charge On program. Comments, questions? Yes, Councillor from Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Melissa. Maybe I'm just being lazy here. I could probably research this myself, but I see we're applying for a couple of these. How much do they cost, and what is the percentage that could be covered by the grant?
You're going to be working on my memory now. So the installation costs for chargers vary depending on the level of charging, so level 1, 2, or 3. They can range from anywhere from $75,000 to over $100,000 depending on the levels. We are looking at a minimum of level 2 to a level 3, and that would be an application for the administration building here in Pembroke as well as Renfrew County Place in Renfrew. And the funding, I will have to get back to you on that because I don't remember off the top of my head at this time. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments on item 8A? Seeing none, item B is the Tourist Growth Program. Sorry, Tourism Growth Program. Item C is the Sustainable Canadian Agriculture Partnership, and in particular, positioning the fruit farming sector for growth. Guess no one here is starting a vineyard. And item number D is the Renfrew County Community Futures Development Corporation Development Fund. And finally, item E is the OMAFRA Rural Economic Development Program, the RED program. Comments, questions? Seeing none, then I will go back to Ms. Marquardt for resolutions.
Thank you, Chair. So on page 92 of the report, under COVID debt recovery and CEBA loan deadline, I will read the recommendation. That the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council supports the letter and resolution received from the City of Stratford requesting the federal government to extend the Full Canada Emergency Business Account, otherwise known as the CEBA, program deadline by extending the forgiveness up to $20,000 of the maximum $60,000 deadline for businesses to coincide with the new repayment deadline of December 31st, 2026. And further, that the warden send a letter of support to the Honourable Chrystia Freeland, Finance Minister.
Thank you, Ms. Marquardt. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor from Town of Arnprior. Background?
Thank you, Chair. So as many of you know, there was a number of financial support programs put in place by the federal government during the COVID pandemic. A lot of that was the Canada Emergency Business Account, or rural relief funds, and those deadlines for repayment are coming up January 18th, so 2 days from now, actually. And there is some concern that a lot of the business community are not going to be able to make those payment deadlines as a result of recovery efforts from the pandemic, just not quite at the level where businesses need them to be. So there is a resolution circulating initiated by the City of Stratford, as I mentioned in the report, requesting that the deadline be rolled over to the December 31st, 2026 deadline, allowing more time for businesses to repay. We, through economic development, surveyed the local business community just to try and get a pulse of where the business community is at in terms of their debt recovery and debt repayment. So you'll see further down a bit of the results from the survey, which we had open for about 3 weeks over the 2.5 weeks over the Christmas holidays with 42 responses. So out of that, 69% of responses did receive some form of pandemic financial assistance, whether it be the CERB, CEBA, Rural Recovery Relief Fund. Overall, in terms of the debt repayment, 24% have repaid in full, 9.5% have only partially repaid, almost 29% have not repaid at all, and then 38% are not applicable. But in terms of whether they're able to make the January 18th, 2024 repayment deadline, 24% will have the loan repaid, while 21% will not have the loan repaid, and only 12% might have the loan repaid, so they're still not sure. In terms of the request for financing, whether businesses have requested an extension, only 7% at the time of the survey closing did request an extension. 17% have not requested an extension, but they plan to, and 33% did not request an extension. And then you'll see further down also the probability of debt repayment by the new deadline. Only 7% out of those respondents will have the debt repaid by the January 18th deadline. So that leaves about 5% who will not have it paid, and 17% who will be unsure whether they can repay it at all. And then there's a few other comments, just general comments we received that we included here that I will allow you to read from the report without going into further detail. Thank you.
Thank you for the background. Comments, questions? The warden, please.
Yes, thank you for doing this. I know it was a result of a conversation you and I had in the parking lot in November. I had been approached in the community, and I didn't know how widespread the concerns were by the local business community. So I ran into Melissa in the parking lot and asked her if she could offer me some advice, and so she agreed that it was unvolunteered to formulate a response for council to consider. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, and I'd just like to add, because watching the news as well, one of the challenges that, as was a result of COVID as well, was that the commercial lease and rental rates have increased substantially, and also causing some of the problems that business owners are having moving forward. So I don't know if that came up as a concern for some of the businesses in Renfrew County. Did you get anything on that, Melissa?
Thank you, Chair. No, specific to rent costs, that did not come up, and that didn't come out in any of the general comments received.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. So then we'll go back to Ms. Markwood for the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association report.
Thank you, Chair. So again, item number, this is on page 112. Item number 1 is the Tourism Growth Program. The same program that I just mentioned in my previous report, so I won't go into full details, but this one is specifically to support the tourism industry. The OVTA will be submitting an application to undertake a destination management plan, which was one of the last outstanding priorities from our 2021-2023 strategic plan. And just as a reminder, on this program, that applicants can request up to $250,000 for projects. There can be more than one project in an application, and activities cannot begin before March 29th, 2023. So if there are projects that are in the works, they can submit eligible expenses for that back to March 29th of 2023. And all projects have to be completed by 2026, March 31st of 2026. Number 2 on the report is the release of the Auditor General's report on the tourism support programs delivered by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. So the report did include 17 recommendations from the Auditor General, and in the report I've highlighted a few of the key recommendations in that. The number 1 being the need to develop a long-term strategic plan for tourism. This is something that's been required and been needed and been asked for by the industry for a number of years now prior to the pandemic happening. As the tourism industry is slower to recover as a result of the pandemic, the industry and the province really needs a strategic plan now in terms of helping to guide the industry through recovery and beyond. So that was to be expected. That would be the number 1 priority. Additional priorities include better alignment of marketing strategies by Destination Ontario and the regional tourism organizations, improved performance tracking for the regional tourism organizations, development of a plan to support private investment in the tourism sector. The report indicates some challenges around tourism investment and that being dissected a little bit across the province. The review of funding programs to ensure consistent delivery and processing funding programs in a more timely manner. So specific to that is the Experience Ontario fund, which in past years, the province has been very late in issuing responses, so late in the fact that some events had to be canceled because they were dependent on that funding and didn't receive notification until after the event had occurred. So the province, one of the recommendations in the audit report is that those timelines need to be moved up and priority given to applications that are happening sooner rather than later. Number 3 on the report is the Ontario Tourism Health Check report. So this is released quarterly by Destination Ontario that just kind of gives the pulse of tourism recovery efforts as well as where we're at in terms of tourism visitation. Just as a reminder, this report takes the lens of the full province, so it's not specifically referencing to Renfrew County or specific to our Ottawa Valley. However, it does drill down to the regional tourism level for some of the accommodations. So you will see under short-term rentals and traditional accommodations that there is reference to RTO 11, which is Regional Tourism Organization 11, which is the region that includes Renfrew County. So that's as specific as we get as to from a regional perspective, but it's not specific to what's necessarily happening here in Renfrew County. Number 4, it's map production time. So the 2024 road and cycling maps have been produced. They are going to be received from the printers next week, and then distribution happening over the course of this month. But they are available right now as a PDF download off of the OVTA website. Number 5 is the release of the 2024 marketing opportunities, and these are cooperative opportunities for members and stakeholders and communities to buy into that provide cooperative marketing opportunities at reduced rates. Number 6, I think we're all a little bit excited to see the snow. And that's really great because we are going to be filming an episode of Snow Tracks Television here in Renfrew County at the end of the month, so we need lots of the white stuff. So providing that the white stuff stays and we get a little bit more, we will be keeping on track with filming at the end of the month. And if we need a little bit more time, then there is some flexibility in terms of the timing to push that into February if we need. And that is a partnership with Ontario's Highlands as well as some of our other regional partners, including Hastings and Haliburton counties. Number 7 is the release of a membership satisfaction survey, and I will just point out that there is an updated survey link that was sent to you. So the last bit of the survey link should actually read membership survey 2024 instead of OVTA membership 2024. And I know that's really important because you're all chomping at the bit to provide your input on that. So thank you for doing that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Markwood. We'll go back to information item number 1, which is a tourism growth program. Questions, comments? Item number 2 is the Auditor General report on the tourism support programs. Item number 3 is the Ontario Tourism Health Check. Item number 4 is the 2024 road and cycling maps. Item number 5, 2024 marketing opportunities. Item number 6 is the Snow Tracks Television. Yes, the CAO, please.
No need to get nervous. No, just a question. When can I drive my snowmobile on the trails? Same vein, and provide, just, Chair, if you could allow me some lenience on this one. It's about TV shooting. I understand that Renovation Resort is shooting somewhere in the area. I'm just wondering, with Brian Baumler, if they've engaged with us, or if there's any assistance we could provide to that shooting, to the production of that.
Through you, Chair. Yes, actually, the production company approached the OVTA to help us spread the opportunity out to the membership. So we did that back in the summer of 2023, and that resulted in the Arnprior Bowling Alley receiving support and having the show filmed there. We did send the opportunity out again. The production company, once they select a location, doesn't come back to us and tell us where. So we heard about them coming back and being in Wilno and in Golden Lake through the local media like everybody else did. But we have been supporting and sharing those opportunities to our local business community.
Thank you for that. Any other comments, questions? And finally, item number 7 is the membership survey. Seeing no comments, questions, then we will go back to Ms. Markwood for the Enterprise Renfrew County report.
Thank you, Chair. We are now on page 117 of the report. So item number 1 is the extension of the transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. So this is great news. Just as a reminder, the funding for the small business enterprise centers with the province is done on a 2-year transfer payment renewal agreement with the option for a 1 year to renew. So this now puts us into our 1 year to renew option for 2024 to 2025. So that was very good news from the province. Number 2 is the list of the Starter Company Plus award recipients from the fall 2023 intake session. So there were a total of $32,000 in grants awarded to a variety of businesses, from everything from coffee to fitness to artistry, pet care and dog grooming services, culinary and food, as well as rehabilitation services. So a good collection of new businesses starting up and continuing to expand in Renfrew County. And just as a reminder, the next intake period for the program begins in April with the information sessions, and then the program training actually begins in May. Item number 3 is just an update on webinars and workshops. There was an artificial intelligence workshop held in December, and then there are a number of workshops happening over January and February, mostly related to tax preparation for businesses as well as for sole proprietors, as well as how to submit your HST information. And then there is a session at the end of January called Live Life Swift, which is more about the balance of planning life and work and getting your plans in place for businesses and things like that. And then item number 4 is just an update on the Small Business Enterprise Center Roundtable meeting that took place in Kingston in November, of which Small Enterprise Renfrew County Small Business Advisor Heather attended. So they get together about quarterly, and this is to share resources and information and best practices between the small business centers, as well as they were doing a bit of strategic planning for the upcoming fiscal year. And as a result of that meeting, Enterprise Renfrew County will be hosting the February fall virtual meeting, and will be showcasing some of the new tools that they've put in place to manage the summer company program, specifically the Google Classroom suite of products, which was implemented by our own program officer, Lindsay DeBurton, and it proved to be very successful with the summer company students in getting them involved and making sure they're submitting reports and things on time. And so there was great interest from all of the other small business enterprise centers to learn about that. So our team will be leading the rest of the business advisors on implementation for that program. And that completes my report.
Thank you once again, Ms. Markwood. Going back to information item number 1, the extension of the transfer payment agreement. Yes, Warden.
Yes, thank you. Can the manager explain to us what happens next in terms of, do we apply for a 5-year contract and provide metrics, or what happens next?
Through you, Chair. So what happens next is the province will issue the agreement, the transfer payment agreement, which we will bring to committee and council for final approval. And then the ministry tells us when they will be announcing the next round of negotiations for the 2025 to, I guess that would be 2027 plus 1 year to renew. So in terms of, for this current contract, for the April 1st, 2024 to 25, we were just notified just a couple weeks ago about that continuation. Typically for the fiscal after that, so for 2025 to 2026, we'll probably be notified around the same time, which would be the December, January timeframe.
Thank you. So it's essentially business as usual. Okay,
yes.
Great.
Councillor from Murray, did you have your hand? Okay. No problem. Item number 2 is the Starter Company Plus and the 2023 fall session. Comments, questions? I just had one. Is this the total number of applicants, or do you get a larger number and you have to decide who gets the support?
There are actually more applicants that run through the program. Not everyone who runs through the program decides to make a pitch for a grant application. So I don't have the total number of program participants, but these were the 9 that did apply, and they did receive. So all that, in terms of this round, the 9 that did apply were awarded their grants.
Thank you for that. Any other comments, questions on item number 2? Item number 3, the webinars and workshops. Item number 4, the Eastern Region Small Business Enterprise Roundtable. Seeing no further comments or questions, then we will move to the forestry report. And Ms. Rose, please.
Thank you, Chair. On page 120 of your package, information item number 1 is the operations update. We are now complete all of our 2023 operations in harvesting, and in addition, there was 24 hectares of mechanical site preparation that we finished at Beechburg Tract in mid-December. So the 2023 annual report is included as Appendix 4.1 in your package. And if you had a look through that, you will have seen most of that information throughout the year, but it's just a summary for our records. You'll also see that the total revenue for 2023 was over $380,000, which is significantly higher than normal. But if you look closely at that, you'll see that most of that revenue, well, a vast majority of the revenue is carryover from 2022. So back in 2022, our revenue was only about $160,000, so slightly below budget. And I did do a summary for myself. Since we started our forest management plan in 2017, our budgeted revenue is $180,000 a year, and our actual revenue has been about $219,000 a year. So we're doing pretty good. We've had some good markets, and yeah, we're continuing on in 2024. Operations have already started at 2 out of 5 of our tenders for this year, and yeah, that will bring me to item number 2, which is the harvest tender results for our 2024 timber harvest tender. And we did get bids for all 5 tenders, one of which we've been trying to get rid of for a few years now, the Ruby Tract. So we got a couple of really great bids on that tract. So our total estimated revenue is above our estimate, which is projected at $282,600 should all operations be completed in 2024. And just a reminder that our actual revenue is based on the actual volume harvested, and the bid prices are based on estimates. So item number 3 is just an update for you. We've talked a little bit about this in the past. Every year we do get audited for our Forest Stewardship Council certification, and this year we also were audited as a trial for the Sustainable Forest Initiative in November at the same time. So an audit team came in person this year and visited our recent harvest operation at Crow's Nest and Beechburg Tract, and the site preparation was active while they were there. So they also do an in-depth review of all of the documentation that we incur throughout the year, and contacted a list of stakeholders for feedback on the management of Renfrew County Forests. So although there's no final audit report yet, we have been told that preliminary results were positive with no non-conformances identified, and hopefully that is the same as we get in the final report, which we hope to receive soon. So I'll give you an update on that once we receive it. Item number 4 is just some information about the Ontario Invasive Species Strategic Plan. So this was brought to my attention by Chair Brose, and just had a look through it. And so it's basically been 10 years since the Ontario Invasive Species Strategic Plan was released. So this was a review on the progress. And there was some significant items that have taken place. And as you know, we talk a lot about invasive species in the forestry report. So this is an interesting one just to have a look at. There's been a lot of collaboration that's happened, outreach and education by the province, and developing materials with partners, training, best management practices to help people and organizations identify and manage invasive species. So that's definitely true. There's been some great resources put out there. One really big one is the milestone of releasing the Early Detection and Distribution Mapping System, also known as EDD Maps. That's an app, and I use that myself and encourage anyone who is keen about controlling invasive species. It's pretty simple. You can take pictures of any plants or insects that you might come across that you think are not supposed to be there. That then gets fed into a mapping system, and for confirmation of the report to help others know that it's in the area. And also the other milestone was the development of the Ontario Invasive Species Act in 2015. Number 5 is just a summary of some outreach over the last couple of months. So Jake Wakelin, our forestry technician, was invited and went to lead a group at Shaw Woods Outdoor Education Center upon request for a forestry session that they had in November. There was some great feedback from that day. You may remember, or some of you would have been around, back in 2015, we started the Renfrew County Forestry Outreach and Education Group, led by the county, but to try to bring together local industry, forestry nonprofits, educators, and other parties with an interest in increasing the public understanding and positive perception of forestry. And that was upon the request of the local sector to try to increase the positive profile of the sector. We kind of stalled for a bit from our annual meetings that we were having during COVID-19, but we're going to reignite the group, and we plan to meet in late February. So you will get an update on that after the meeting. Also, just your monthly update for the Shaw Woods Outdoor Education Center. Myself and Chair Bros attended on December 21st. Lots of great things happening there, as usual. Still a high level of interest, and their programs are very full from local school groups. When they're not having school visits, the outdoor education educators on staff there, they do make visits to those who can't come in person. So I thought it was interesting to hear about an upcoming visit to Marion Hill Long-Term Care Home. So they're bringing nature to those who might not have an opportunity to visit Shaw Woods in person. There was appreciation from the teachers and the board for our forestry technicians' help back in November. The paramedic Sierra team was at Shaw Woods for their 2-day recertification program, and I think, from what I understand, that happens quite often, and that's a really great partnership to hear about. Another really interesting one is the continual improvement to the site to improve the accessibility of Shaw Woods, making more options available for inclusive use of students. And a really nice story was shared about making it possible for a student with a low-profile wheelchair was able to come to the site and participate meaningfully with their class. And that's all my information items. I'll pause there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. So going back to information item number 1, the operations update, comments, questions? Item number 2 is the harvest tender results. Just one on the Petsnick Lake rejected bid. Is that something that then gets re-tendered this year or next, or how is that handled?
That was just one received bid that was rejected, and there were other acceptable bids that were received. So that one has been accepted.
Thank you for that. Warden, please.
Thank you. Great results on last year in revenue, and then again with the projections here. And you noted that we were aiming for an average. Now, I seem to remember that our long-term plan indicated a gap or a dip in revenue maybe 15 years out from now. Has anybody updated that so that, because of this additional revenue, that may smooth that out? So if that's the case, if we get an update, because then council can make some informed decisions about not touching this reserve, setting it up as a reserve for that period where it dips. So if we can get an update on that at some point in the future, just to keep council appraised of it. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. That's a great question. So our forest management plan time frame is from 2017 to 2020, the end of 2026. So not too long from now, I will be starting the planning process again for a 2027 plan. And I did do a 5-year annual report last year, I believe, and do keep track on and on. But you're right, you're exactly correct. Come about 2040, there will be a significant reduction in the amount of revenue available from the Renfrew County Forest, because most of our forest is about the same age, and our plantations will start to be at the final removal stage at that time. And you're also right that we, from this plan forward, will be having to spend quite a bit more on regeneration activities if we want to maintain that pine component, which is bringing us this revenue that we've come to expect and enjoy from the Renfrew County Forest. So the reserve is becoming more important as time is going on, and there will be less available to go in it as we move forward in our forest management planning process. Thank you for the question.
Are there any other questions on item number 2? Item number 3 is the Forest Stewardship Council and the Sustainable Forest Initiative Audit. Councillor from Town of Brent Briar.
Thank you, Chair. Just a shout out to Lacey and their crew to say, well done. There was a TV program within the last week saying how the forestry within Canada and specifically Ontario was deteriorating and that all our animals were going to disappear and whatnot. I was waiting for them to say County of Renfrew and they didn't. So congrats on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Item number 4 is the Ontario Invasive Species Strategic Plan. And again, I really want to thank Lacey for her feedback in the strategic plan update that the province is working on. Item number 5 is the outreach. Comments, questions? Seeing none, then back to Ms. Rose for resolutions.
Thank you, Chair. So this one is a bit of a doozy, so bear with me as we talk about the Eastern Wolf federal uplisting. First, I'll read the recommendation. That the Development and Property Committee recommends that staff prepare comments supporting local agriculture, forest, and hunting trapping industries on the reclassification of eastern wolf from special concern to threatened on Schedule 1 list of wildlife species at risk of the Species at Risk Act and any future postings on eastern wolf.
You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor from Greater Madawaska, seconded by Councillor from Laurentian Valley. And background, please, Lacey.
Okay, so this is a federal issue that we're talking about here. So I just found out about this a week before the comments closed. They were supposed to close on December 11th, 2023. The federal government has proposed to change the designation under the Species at Risk Act of eastern wolf from special concern to threatened. We did reach out to the ministry in charge of this and request an extension so that this committee could receive this information and consider feedback. Since most of eastern wolf's range includes Renfrew County, so I thought it was a pretty important one for us to talk about here. We did receive an extension to submit comments until January 26th. And these comments will be used to determine social economic impacts and determine next steps. So provincially, eastern wolf was listed as special concern in 2008. It was then renamed Algonquin wolf and uplisted to threatened in 2016, and it's recently been changed back to eastern wolf by the Committee on the Status of Species at Risk in Ontario. So in this province, it's kind of undergoing a parallel strategy because once it was changed back to eastern wolf, it has triggered a 2-year timeline to complete a recovery strategy. So we'll have to stay tuned for that and keep an eye also. But you may remember that back in 2018, there was a draft recovery strategy released and proposed a large hunting ban for the Algonquin wolf, and there was a lot of backlash from farmers and hunters locally. A couple of those letters are included in your package, just to refresh your memory. After that, a final recovery was not ever released, so the current level of protection for eastern wolf in Ontario is on Crown land. From a forestry perspective, the species is protected under the Crown Forest Sustainability Act, and forest operations can continue, although regular protection of identified habitat values such as den sites or wolf rendezvous, which is where they stash their pups for the day while the adults are off hunting, those are protected. And from a hunting and trapping perspective, since 2001, there's been no hunting or trapping of wolves or coyotes in Algonquin Park or the surrounding townships. More area outside of Renfrew County was added to this prohibition in 2016, and those were other provincial park sites. So why does this matter? So eastern wolf, like I just discussed, is already protected and listed through the Species at Risk in Ontario Act. And although the federal listing reads as though it is only for federal land, it does include the following statement, that if the minister is of the opinion that critical habitat on non-federal land is not effectively protected or that there is an imminent threat to the species, other regulatory action can be taken under SARA, the Species at Risk Act. The social economic impacts of each regulatory assessment will be action will be assessed if this additional protection becomes necessary. And if you are a news person, you may have been hearing over the last few years that this imposition has happened on caribou in Ontario and is causing a lot of conflict in Northern Ontario for a number of industries. So just carrying on a little bit with this, that federal listings usually do include additional protection measures and map critical habitat. The Ontario Federation of Agriculture, the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, and the Ontario Forest Industries Association have all expressed concerns with this federal uplisting and have either submitted comments or will be submitting comments. The main concerns by those associations include data deficiency, the population information on the wolf is outdated, duplication with existing provincial protections, impacts on other species, implications to livestock production, and potential for prohibitions and protections to apply on private land. And 2 of those letters are included in your package for your information. So staff recommends that the County of Renfrew submit supportive comments aligning with the associations who have a vested interest in the County of Renfrew. Specifically, that any proposed amendments to this Species at Risk Act would not apply on private and municipal land. Just highlighting, like we've just talked about, that the species is already protected provincially, where most of the range occurs, and to duplicate this protection is redundant and could adversely affect landowners and sectors in our area. And also a request to update the assessment and provide more data to ensure that this decision is justified, including another socioeconomic impact assessment to determine if the recommendation is still warranted and would not cause undue societal harm for little benefit to the species. So that concludes the background. Sorry for the length of that.
Thank you, Ms. Rose, for that very detailed background report. Any comments, questions? I see none. You've covered that very well, and I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. So we will now move on to the Real Estate Division report, and Mr. Revs, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to the committee. The real estate report can be found on page 135. And the information item number 1 is just the year-end update on the 2023 projects. And as you can see, there was 4 projects completed. There are 2 projects pertaining to the RCP building that'll be a carryover, and that work will be done. I believe the HVAC units may be installed in February, March, with the second project being the roof. That'll be, we anticipate completed early in the spring, probably April or May. And we will have an update on the 2024 projects in the February report, which the projects identifying the 2024 projects. Item number 2 is regarding the new build at the corner of Lee Street and Douglas. And perhaps, Tina, can I get you to bring up those pictures? So as you can see, that project is progressing well. We're probably at approximately about 65% completion. The completion date is for mid-May. And as you can see, the drywall has been recently installed in the inside of the building. And then on the exterior, they've put the silver board on the exterior of the building. So the majority of the work over the next 2 or 3 months will be, the majority of it will be pertaining to the interior of the building. And as you can see in the figures there, the construction date value to date is $3,315,228.40, with the cost savings an estimated value of $43,496. And item number 3 is a bit of good news. As you can see, we received a check through the natural gas procurement program in the amount of $4,574.20. Of course, that's always welcome as opposed to issuing a check. And that is a result of, there was, I guess, a surplus during that period of October 2021 to October 22. I think there was a surplus of $750,000. And of course, that was distributed amongst the municipalities that are enrolled in the program. And information item number 4 is an update on the future Eganville paramedic base. We did start work in November pertaining to the first phase being the post-disaster upgrades, and that was completed in late November, early December. And the current status is we have issued an RFT for the second phase being the retrofit for the office area of the first and second level. And that RFT was issued on January 10th, and the closing date will be January 25th, 2024. And Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Raditz. Going back to information item number 1, the real estate report on the 2023 capital projects that have been completed and are or have been carried over. Comments, questions? Seeing none, item number 2 is the Lee Street new build, and appreciate those pictures. Item number 3 is the LAS, the Local Authority Services Natural Gas Program, and the fund rebate. And finally, item number 4 is the future Eganville paramedic base. Seeing no comments or questions, then we will move to Mr. Howarth and the Planning Services Division report.
Thank you, Chair. The planning report is found on page 139 of the committee package. Information item 1 is an update on the climate action change plan. Work continues on this plan. The goals of this program is to provide short-term and actions that are required to improve energy efficiency, reduce energy consumption, scale up renewable energy generation, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions for the county. Staff are continuing to work with the consultant. We're in the process of data gathering and providing to the consultant information with regards to county fleet, our buildings, and just other actions that we as a county generate. And the consultant will then take this information in and provide some calculations and use that data to provide the action plan. We did invite the consultant to the county council this month. So at the January county council, Ainsworth will be here to provide a special delegation, to provide an overview of the project, and also to provide an update of the climate change action plan. And just another item for information, one aspect of that the plan was looking at was the consultant asked to look at commuting patterns from the county staff. And this is just provide an example of what some of the capabilities of the GIS software is that we have. And so through the ELA, the Enterprise License Agreement that we have with Esri, one of the aspects of that is to be able to provide some new and interesting tools. And so there is just as for information, just an example of what we're able to do with some of that GIS capabilities now, and there's a map that shows some of the commuting patterns for county staff, and that data was provided to the consultant and will be inputted into that plan. Item number 2, Chair, is the Planning Division Activity Report. It is attached as Plan 1, is the annual activity tracker. Over the course of 2023, we did receive 8 applications for plans of subdivision that proposed to create an additional 272 units for housing. In addition, we have received 197 new consent applications and issued 256 decisions for consents. In addition to processing planning applications, we have had our planning staff providing planning orientations to local councils. We've expanded office hours at some of the local municipalities. We've implemented many changes to processes and policies, and this is largely in reaction to changes to provincial legislation. And we've continued to work on long-term projects when we've been able to, such as comprehensive zoning bylaws. Looking towards 2024, we're anticipating another busy year, especially if, as previously discussed, a new provincial policy statement is approved by the province, which could result in a significant review and update process for the county official plan. Item number 3 is an update with regards to GIS activity. There's a list of and highlights of some of the anticipated undertakings for 2024. I just would like to highlight a couple of those, and I believe some of them will be discussed as the budget is discussed as well. So A is new air photography that's being flown in spring of 2024. I believe that we've provided previous information to the committee about this project as well. This is it's called DRAPE, and this is our air photography that's been made available both on the public website, and we've also provided to local municipalities, and it's been a very important tool for many divisions within the county, whether it's public works, planning, or EMS. So there's lots of use for this data. B is our web mapping application, and there'll be further discussion about this as well. The current GIS online mapping system is getting out of date, and updates are needed to update the software due to the retirement of some of the JavaScript. And so we're going to have discussions with regarding whether to migrate some of this data into the newest version, or also looking at using some of the tools based on that ArcGIS Enterprise, or using ArcGIS Server under our enterprise license agreement to bring some of this potentially in-house. So we're looking at options about that, moving that forward, but that's going to be a significant undertaking regardless of which direction we choose. And also working with we'll just jump down to F, I guess, is working with the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association and also Public Works to produce better online mapping and schedules. So the GIS division is quite busy. We have a lot of projects in the hopper for 2024. And I will stop there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howarth. So we will go back to information item number 1, which is the Climate Change Action Plan. Item number 2 is the Planning Division Activity Report. Item number 3 is the GIS activity. Appreciate the busy schedule you're looking at for 2024. So back to you, Mr. Howarth, for resolutions.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just read the recommendation. So item 4 is a Minister zoning order for McNabb Braeside. So the recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee directs staff to provide comments on the Environmental Registry of Ontario, the ERO, posting 019-8001, potential revocations, amendments, and enhanced monitoring of certain ministers' zoning orders, encouraging the ministry to not revoke zoning orders, Ontario Regulation 537/21 and 538/21.
You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor from McNabb Braeside, seconded by the Warden. Background?
Thank you, Chair. Attached as Appendix Plan 2 is a letter that was received by the Township of McNabb Braeside. It was sent to them from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. As background, in July of 2021, the ministry approved 2 minister zoning orders for properties in McNabb Braeside. The first one is on Russet Drive, which is very close, or actually across the road from the existing the township's municipal office. And the second MZO was for land adjacent to Highway, I guess it's 417 now because it's been twinned, 417 and off of Campbell Drive. The purpose of these MZOs were to facilitate the approvals to allow a variety of manufacturing facilities to be built in the township, and it was estimated that there was the potential to have upwards of 600 new jobs. So the ministry had issued this MZO, and in the time since then, the ministry has been viewing these MZOs and are looking for activity or making sure that some of these MZOs, the development is being actively undertaken. So the ministry has posted on the ERO the proposal to potentially revoke these two MZOs, and our understanding is that that is mainly due to the lack of activity that has taken so far on these places, on these two sites. So staff are proposing that we provide comments on that MZO in support of keeping these properties with the Minister's zoning order on them to promote opportunities for job economic growth within Renfrew County.
Thank you, Mr. Howarth. Comments, questions? Yes, Councillor from McNabb Braeside.
Thank you, Chair. We're certainly in support of this recommendation. The item will be on our council meeting tonight, and we're hopeful that this is just a communication issue. And it's certainly understandable that the ministry needs to see progress on these things when the issue something as important as an MZO. And the proponents have been very busy and active in doing all the background work. This information is provided and been provided to council, and like I said, it'll be on our agenda, but they've been conducting many of the studies. The shovels aren't actually in the ground at this point, but they're working on that. So John Yakubuski has been in touch with me, and he wants to keep updated on this so that he can keep the minister updated. But we're confident that when the ministry sees the full list of things that have been going on in the background, that it will not be revoked at this time. So we're continuing to work on it at the township level, and we appreciate the support of the county.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. And Mr. Howarth, back to you for bylaws.
Thank you, Chair. On page 141 is the recommendation. So I'll read the recommendation before going into the background. So the recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council adopt a bylaw to refuse the proposed official plan amendment number 42.
I've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor from Town of Arnprior, seconded by Councillor from Town of Petawawa. Background, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, attached as Appendix Plan 3 is the proposed official plan amendment, and there's also a detailed planning report, and I believe that planning report starts on page 152 of the committee package. The purpose of this application is to amend the County of Renfrew official plan and to redesignate 2 hectares of a approximate 58-hectare farm. The farm is currently in an agricultural designation, and the proposal is to change that designation to a rural designation, and this change would facilitate the future severance of 2 new residential lots. So staff have reviewed the proposed amendment and recommend that County Council not approve or refuse the application because it is not consistent with the provincial policy statement. In the planning report that's attached, I believe there is a more detailed overview of why staff are recommending refusal and why we don't feel this application meets the criteria and the policies of the provincial policy statement. The provincial policy statement does include very specific definitions and requirements for when land is eligible to be removed from the prime agricultural land. So we've included our analysis and recommendation, and I can definitely go through that in more detail if requested, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howarth. So I'll turn to the committee for comments or questions. Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. So that brings us to the end of this part of the business, and we still have the budget to go through, but I think we'll take a maybe an 8-minute break, and be back here for approximately 11:20 or 11:30. Welcome back, everybody, and I will turn this back over to Director Davis to walk us through the budget.
Oh, and thank you, Chair, and thank you for the indulgence of moving some of the items along. So on page 10 of your committee package, the 3 items we talked about for bringing back at this time, I'll read the recommendation for the first one. Item number 4, page 10, the Development and Property Draft 2024 budget. That the Development and Property Committee recommends that the draft 2024 Development and Property Departmental Budget be forwarded to the January 24th, 2024 Budget Workshop as presented. So, Chair, that's the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor from Town of Arnprior, seconded by Councillor from Laurentian Valley, and I'll go back to you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chair. And what you'll have in front of us, it'll be a tag team approach like we usually do. The CAO will present the first number of slides, and then we have Daniel Burke here to help us out. And then at the very end, you'll see a kind of a tri-departmental a slide, which we have Chief Nolan's here at the back to provide some input, and Acting Director Andrea Patrick to talk about the last slide, which has implications on 3 different departments. So I'll start with CAO Craig Kelly.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Chair. So firstly, let me thank all the directors and managers and admin assistants, of course, for all their hard work, and Mr. Burke for putting together today's budget presentations. These documents have evolved over the years, and we're happy to accept your critique and criticism on the presentation today after the process has concluded. We've modified it a bit, so we'll see how this week goes and next week. So as we launch our presentations, we're recognizing that budgeting is about making choices. When we set out last fall to start building our budgets, we determined quickly that meeting your expected targets would be a very hard task. Several decisions were made during the 2023 budget process that would have mid-year or everlasting implications. We also began to realize very quickly that the cost of business had increased beyond the targeted levy increase, and the pressures of presenting an apples-to-apples operational budget became increasingly apparent and mostly unachievable. What is being presented today and throughout the week is staff's best efforts to continue providing the equivalent level of service that we've been accustomed to and applying the pressures of the financial realities of today. You will also be presented with a number of new enhancements to our operations based upon strategic initiatives that have been suggested leading up to these meetings or in response to our operational needs given our circumstances in some divisions. But again, budgets are about making choices, and as we head towards the budget workshop, you will be presented with these choices, some easier than others, and will definitely have to that will need to be made in order to achieve your target goals. But with that, I'll allow Mr. Burke to walk through most of the process and how we're going to get there today.
Good morning, committee. Before Director Davis walks you through his departmental budgets in detail, I just want to take a minute and go through the format you'll be experiencing over the next several days and next week in the budget workshop as well. So on the slide currently showing on the screens, you have your budget guidelines. The first resolution details a 3% target levy increase. That is our target for this budget. The second resolution concerns the non-union staff cost of living increase, and this is assumed to be 4.79% over the 2023 staff wages. Where we have union agreements in place, we have used those known agreements. Where we have union agreements that have expired, we have made an estimate. The third resolution concerns a carry forward from our November 9th special meeting of County Council, where we have incorporated into this budget an enhanced contribution to our reserves for capital asset renewal, as well as a reduced capital asset management plan in attempt to balance our long-term financial plan and ensure that it is funded over the next 10 years of its life. So beginning with the budget format, if I could start with the columns on the far right that you will have had in your package. You have 5 years of actual financial data, 2022 to 2018. The next 3 columns are variance columns as in absolute dollars as well as percentages. And then we have that blue 2024 baseline budget column. Now this is your status quo budget. What would it take to do what we're doing right now for the 2024 year? The next column further to the left is the pressures column, or what do staff feel are the best places where we can make service level reductions to meet your 3% target. The column further to the left from that is the budget that meets the 3% target as directed by County Council. And then the furthest column on the left is the enhancements, or increased level of service that County Council might consider for the 2024 budget. And new this year, we have ranked our pressures in level of severity. So we have level 1 reductions or pressures, and these are items that we can implement and achieve with a relatively minimal disruption to our level of service provided or cost to implement. The level 2 items are again items that we can implement relatively easily. However, they are temporary or one-time solutions, or they involve shifting costs onto other organizations, so not necessarily permanent solutions from a taxpayer point of view. Level 3 reductions are items that are hard to implement and will affect levels of service provided to residents. And then one other note to point out is that the 3% target was achieved across all departments and committees by taking a global approach. Not all departments meet that 3% target. In fact, you can see development and property, even after those pressure items are taken into account, is still at a 9% increase from the 2023 budget. Rather than force each department and committee to meet a 3% target in isolation, we have looked at the county as a whole and suggested reductions that made the most sense across the corporation. So the levy target is being met, but being met by the corporation as a whole and not necessarily inside this committee. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jason.
Thanks, Daniel and Craig. So again, thank you for staff and financial staff to prepare this document. What you see in front of you and through the next couple of slides and how I plan on presenting this is on the upper left-hand side is the page. You'll see page number 68. This is directly related to your committee package. You see the full document. I've taken screen grabs of different parts of Daniel's report and included it here. So the green page numbers is related to your document. And I've highlighted the blue kind of boxes to highlight the pressures, which we'll talk about at individual divisions, and then the enhancements as yellow as we move forward. So keep that in mind as we go through this. What I'd like to kind of show and kind of highlight, the Development and Property Committee is very heavy for, not in the sense of staff, but the staff related. So when Daniel mentioned that recommendation for the COLA increase of 4.79, that put additional pressures on our staff. And good or bad, we have young staff members here for the Development and Property Department. So they're moving up the grid also. So the COLA is very important to us. We are competing with local municipalities for our current staff and for attracting staff. So the COLA is very important. So that 4.79, it seems like a bonus, but it's not. We're trying to keep that in check with our competitors of local municipalities in Eastern Ontario also. We see the pressures and the salaries compared to us. And then people moving up the grid is another additional pressure, and that's why what you see here in front of you in the screen is a 9.4% increase year over year. However, take that in consideration of the total amount. So the next slide actually shows you the percentage of the budget, the overall budget of Renfrew County compared to or within D&P or Development and Property Department. So this slide really shows your highlights The development and property department is equals 3% of the overall county of Renfrew budget. So percentages, it seems high at 9.4%, but actual value of an additional $134,000. I don't want to say it's not that much, but in comparison to other departments and divisions within the corporation. So keep that in mind when we have this discussion as we move forward. So if I could, Chair, I'll go through each division at a very high level myself. We have the managers and staff here to answer direct questions if there's any direct questions from the committee members. And then I'll pause at every divisional slide, and then hopefully I can go through this fairly fast. But again, this is a good discussion, and hopefully there will be a good discussion, and to make sure that the Development and Property Department is on track and looking at what the needs are from the elected here.
I like that plan. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. So the first section is the real estate division. So Mr. Raddatz behind us, the manager of real estate, looks after a number of portfolios. And starting off, just to give you some highlights, and I'm glad we did the departmental or divisional budgets or discussions before this, because what you saw is a great cross-section of the work we're currently doing and the work we plan on doing in 2024, like the Climate Action Plan, the Lee Douglas build. So specifically for real property, a reminder, we're working on that Lee and Douglas build, that $3.2 million build. We have 202 Cecil, another duplex that we're building for Renfrew County Housing Corporation, working with the paramedic service for the new ambulance base in the village of Eganville, the O'Grady property. We're looking to do a housing summit. We're partnering with our social services, community services team members to have a housing summit to see how we can assist more housing, whether it's attainable, affordable, rent geared to income, what we can do. So in the first or second quarter of this year, and really quickly, staff will send out emails to local municipalities and organizations to set this meeting up. So this housing initiative is a big priority for me through Craig, and I want this to happen relatively fast. Also keep in mind, we're still working with Habitat for Humanity for a possible build in the town of Renfrew or Armpire. And we're working with the town of Deep River for the Keys Public School and then the possibilities there for a housing initiative. So lots of things going on for our housing or real estate division moving forward. Looking at that first slide, this is a slide for this building here. So the Pembroke building, the CAB, the administrative building. What you see is a status quo budget. No big pressures that you see. There's no enhancements, but there's no big pressures. There's small variations within the budget itself, but overall it's a status quo budget for this. And you'll see that in the summary slide that you saw at the very beginning. Real estate is very static, which is a good thing. There's still pressures. There's still some unknowns. We do have 2 full-time staff. We do have inflationary pressures for contract services. Some of the capital works we'll be working on with this building is a generator transfer switch for $33,000, and we're doing some additional work, roof working for this building of $123,000. So keep in mind, we do receive revenues from different divisions. So the paramedic service and community services do pay us some lease revenues to help offset some of our costs for this building. And Chair, maybe at the first stage, we'll pause at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any questions or comments at this point? Warden, please.
You mentioned the roof. So is it just a section of the roof in this building, or is it the whole roof over? Like, I know some roofs, especially flat ones, you can do sections of it over a multi-year period. So I'm curious what that means.
Mr. Raddatz?
There we go. Thank you for the question, Warden. This is regarding that small roof, I guess, be over in the old lunchroom, I believe. That's in the development and property area of the building. That roof does have to be replaced.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I see none, so go ahead, Mr. Davis.
The second facility we're going to talk about is Renfrew County Place. A reminder that this used to be an old Canadian Tire building, which we purchased for a tax receipt, and then now we have a second administrative building. So keep in mind, we do have one full-time staff, and some of the capital programs we'll be working on for that building is going to be an upgraded security system for $74,000, lighting equipment for $74,000, the second exterior garage for the paramedic service for $250,000, and a light vehicle or new vehicle for our staff that works there. Again, the majority of the revenues we receive are from outside agencies, including some internal ones. We do receive about $210,000 revenues from external services. And again, just to keep in mind, we have one unit or one block of units within Renfrew County Place that's currently housing VTAC, but will be vacant next month. And so we expect to have a tenant in there by the end of the year. So we've estimated a cost of $10,000 of revenue for a possible tenant for that location. So I think I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you for that. Any comments or questions on Renfrew County Place? I see none, so please keep going.
Thank you, Chair. So just we do maintain through the real estate division and Mr. Raditz a number of ambulance bases throughout Renfrew County, and including the newest purchase in Eganville. So we do have 6, including the Eganville location, 6 paramedic services buildings that we maintain. All costs are recovered with internal leases through the paramedic service. Some of the capital works we'll be working on is we're going to upfit the air conditioning units for the Armpire base. And again, a reminder that was brought to this committee and county council, the upfit costs for the Eganville base or the O'Grady property of approximately $400,000, which we've started, as Mr. Raditz mentioned today. The RFT has been issued, so we're expecting some answers next week to see what the costs are for the office space as we move forward. Also in part of our budget and part of our discussion is reserve of transfers, or reserve 2 transfers of $291,000 to repay back some of the capital costs for these bases over the 15 to 20-year period. So again, the paramedic service does pay for themselves as we build individual units for them. So, and also what you'll see in this slide deck is under enhancements, that yellow box, you see $15,500. What we're asking for under enhancement is to increase 1 day a week from an existing employee, a contract employee, to service the new paramedic base in Eganville for the maintenance of that. So that's why you see the $15,500 as an enhancement, and you'll see the business case as we move forward if we get through this package under item number 6 of the committee package of my departmental report. So that's the first enhancements you'll see.
Thank you. Any comments, questions on the bases? I see none, so you can go ahead.
So on page 71 of your committee package is the section for the Armpire office, or the 80 McGonigal office. A reminder, we built this office, or we renovated this office back in 2013 and 14 to accommodate community services at the time. Since that time, community services has moved out. The paramedic program has moved in, along with Armpire Health. So right now, to share that cost, Armpire Health is paying about half of the cost of that building. Again, and sharing the external costs with the Armpire Health is the paramedic program. So they're carrying a heavy load to the paramedic program as they, when they move into certain areas, they do pay for us and pay for the building. Some of the capital works we're looking at is to upgrade the security system. That security system is over 15 years old. Staff is continually working on this security system, so we need to upgrade the system, and the approximate cost for that is $30,000. And some of the enhancements to move the paramedic program into this building, we're going to upgrade the garage for around $30,000, the existing garage. Also to include within the garage is an oil separator facility within the garage system. system, and one other item for $70,000 is a generator for this building. Again, these are estimated costs as we move forward. We see this as a necessity as because of the paramedic program that's going to be existing there, and they're existing there right now. So, Chair, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Questions or comments on the umpire office? Looks like we're good. Please.
Last item for the real estate division is the Renfrew OPP. A reminder, we built this for the OPP, and it's a cost recovery. One thing about this is it's very nice. This will be paid off in 2031. So we spent approximately, give or take, $3 to $4 million to create this building for the OPP, and once 2031 comes around, we will be in full payment back of this building. So part of this program, again, is a one-time part-time employee, and what you see here is the same number of $15,500. So this employee sits in the OPP budget line item, but then you see it transferred over to the Eganville base or for enhancement. That's what you see in two different areas. It's the same numbers, it's the same person, it's the additional day because the person sits, air quote, sits in the OPP budget line item. As a reminder that all internal, includes internal recoveries for staff time, to us. So whatever the OPP does and requests us to do, we do it, and then we can charge them back at the end of the year.
Thank you. Any questions on the Renfrew OPP? Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Now we're moving on to forestry. It's a little different. We have some budget pressures within this division, and there's a good segue that when Lacey talked about in her divisional report some of the revenue. So we've budgeted every year since we've taken over forestry back in 2013, us as in Lacey and myself. Our budget target has always been $180,000. And some people will see, well, your average is $200,000+. We could increase our budget. We never want to do that. The $180,000 is a very manageable number. You'll see fluctuations as we move forward, so I'd rather keep a base level of $180,000 than increase or decrease it as years go through. So keep that in mind when we talk about this budget. We've included $180,000 for revenue. Also, what we have, some of the stats for the forestry division. So we do have 2 full-time forestry people, Lacey Rose and Jacob Wakelin, and this is part of the restructuring back in 2023 from when we kind of did a small minor restructuring where we added a forestry technician and we added a GIS technician early last year. Keep in mind, last year we did sign a lease agreement with a telecommunication company, so we're expecting revenues from that this current year. We are planning on purchasing a forestry truck because the current truck is a little outdated and a little wear and tear on it, and we've budgeted, in what you'll see there, we budgeted $60,000 to be taken from that forestry reserve. Also keep in mind when the forest management plan was approved by county council back in 2016, I do believe. I'm kind of looking over at Lacey. There's a number of recommendations from county council, and part of those recommendations was try to top up the forestry reserve. Right off the bat, we're talking about putting 15% of that $180,000 back into forestry reserves. And then any surpluses, any money above the $180,000 goes to the forestry reserve. As Lacey mentioned earlier in the divisional report, we have plans on spending these monies, these forestry reserves, especially for the regeneration of the Beachburg Tract. This costs money. When we do a harvest operation, we want to replant and redo these areas, and it costs money. We need these forestry reserves to be kept healthy. Currently, you'll see in the reserve section of the committee package, we have a little over $200,000 of last year's account in the forestry reserves, and we plan on pulling things out like this, like the reforestation and the trucks and things like that. This is where you see the first level. I do believe it's a level 2 possibility to make our budget our 3% budget. What we're talking about is removing the $27,000 from our forestry reserve from the expected revenue of $180,000. You will not see in this committee package or this budget report, there's no staff recommendations. These are just possibilities of cost-saving measures. So this is what Daniel mentioned as a level 2 possibility of $27,000 to meet this, including at the very beginning of the budget cycle, Lacey talked about needing surveys. I think we talked to this committee and county council. We're looking at encroachment issues all the time on our county forests. There's 16,000 acres. People always like to do things on our county forests. And through this budget creation, we wanted to put $10,000 towards this, towards surveys. So when we need to, and when we have a dispute with a neighbor saying they're encroaching, we have the possibility and the budget line item of $10,000 to say we get a survey and yes, you are encroaching, or no, you're not. Part of this recommendation to meet this 3% is to remove that $10,000. And so that's why you see the reductions of $37,000, 27 from the forestry reserve, which we don't recommend, and the $10,000 of the surveys. And Chair, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Looking at the councillor from Town of Arnprior.
Thank you, Chair. Just to refresh my memory, if there's any surpluses that goes to the capital reserves, it doesn't get to go into the forest reserve if you have the property. Was there not a conversation on that last year or the year before?
If I may, Chair, so for clarity, any surpluses above the $180,000 goes back to the forestry reserve. And so not the capital reserve, but the forestry reserve.
Any other questions?
If I can, I think I know what Councillor Lynch is thinking. That's weird. It's a weird way of saying it. It's not the weird that I'm thinking. Yeah, I believe you may be recalling that if there's a corporate surplus at the end of the year, that those surpluses, the first draw on all surpluses shall go towards paying off the Algonquin Trail. And I think maybe that's what you were referring to. But then there's a separate resolution that talks about forestry surpluses, and it's confusing, it's government, but that's how it works with the forestry revenues for sure.
And just an additional piece of information, because I had this question for Lacey. The federal government has I can't remember, Lacey, is it 2 billion tree program or is it 5? 2. However, it doesn't apply to reforestation, which is unfortunate. So it only applies to vacant land that is being planted for forestry. So unfortunately, it's not something that the county could tap into. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, CEO Kelly, for the clarity. The next divisional is the GIS, Geographic Information System, and that, again, found on page 72 of your committee package. GIS, very technical. I don't want to get into the weeds, but I will if I have to. What you'll see here is we have 2 full-time GIS staff. Typically, our revenues or funds come from some MMP, municipal modernization funds, back in 2023, where we purchased a 3-year contract with ESRI Esri Canada for an enterprise license agreement, which is a good thing because it's unlimited access for staff, and more importantly, it gives access to this GIS or mapping software to all local municipalities in an unlimited capacity. So I think it's a beneficial thing. We're moving forward with that. Some of the items we're working on with Bruce Howarth and the team is the flood mapping initiative, which we're working through as we speak, and we're receiving 50% funds through the province and the federal government. We do receive some local municipal revenues when they ask for customized mapping or customized support. But moving forward as a capital item, what you see here in the slide deck, we will have some capital purchases. We are budgeting $20,000 for a new plotter. plotter means a big printer, a wide format printer for $20,000. In the past, we've always tried to cost share with Public Works, but working with Daniel and the team, I thought it'd be better just to put it in one budget instead of trying to split it out all the time. More importantly, and this is where the confusion may arise, and I'll try to slow down if I could, it's the computer supply and maintenance line item. As Bruce Howarth, our Manager of Planning Services, mentioned, our software for our web application is going to be out of date in 2024. And the municipalities, the public, internally, we rely on that. We've been given a high level of cost of around $70,000, $60,000 to improve that, to make it compliant for today's numbers or today's environment. At the same time, you see under the enhancements column of a $20,000. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? We have to plan that we may have to increase or upgrade our web application to make sure it's functional. But at the same time, we would like to look at, in working with Esri Canada, how can we maximize our ELA or our enterprise license agreement? We think there could be some functionalities within this enterprise license agreement. We could upgrade our web application while working with IT internally and host this web application internally if that's possible. And so that's why you see on the line item under enhancements of $20,000. We'd really, truly love to have this. As we move GIS and mapping forward within the corporation, this is our first step. Our IT department requests that we do this. They don't have the capacity and the knowledge for GIS to move GIS to the next step within the corporation of the County of Renfrew, and they requested some additional third-party support, and that's why you see that $20,000 for this as an enhancement. So it's a little confusing, but I think both are essential. We do have to plan for the worst for our web application, but again, under the enhancements, we should plan on next steps, looking into the future beyond 2024 and beyond. And Chair, I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you for that. Any questions on that GIS system? I see none, so please keep going.
Again, for moving on to economic development on page 73 of your committee package. Again, Melissa has done a great job of highlighting or good cross sections of what the economic development division does for the County of Renfrew and local municipalities and the public. What you see here is, I guess I should do stats. So there's 3 full-time staff. Funding comes from some RED grants. We do receive some minor recoveries from Taste the Valley and the NECDEV conference. There is one item, and I want to highlight this, for a possible level 2 savings or cuts. I don't want to say cuts, but I'll say savings to meet that 3% target for our division, is to remove the agriculture support program of $22,000. You see that in blue? Keep in mind, these monies help support local organizations like the 4-H Club. Last year, we provided the 4-H Club, I'm kind of looking at our numbers here, approximately $5,000 to help support the programs here in Renfrew County. In the past, we've provided support through this grant, through these monies, to the Ontario Woodlot Association, the Cattlemen's Association, and more importantly, the Agricultural Newsletter, a quarterly newsletter. So even though it's highlighted here, we don't recommend to do this because this will impact a number of smaller organizations within Renfrew County. It's a small amount, but it's part of our budget deliberation and discussion. So keep that in mind, how this number, it's small. It could help meet our 3%, but it will impact these local local organizations that really require this support. Chair.
Thanks for that. Any questions on the economic development? Yes, Councillor from Greater Madawaska.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just, I see on line item conventions, 21,000's gone down from 4,000. Is that for attendees of conventions, or is that presenting at, or as a vendor at conventions to get our tourism out there?
Melissa?
Thank you, through you, Chair. That is for staff attendance at conferences, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Davis?
I should just, 1 second before I move on, is the enhancement column under economic development. I didn't highlight this. So what you see there is we would like to budget $2,500 for moving this Renfrew Shire twinning engagement along, and this could help pay for some of the either engagement processes, meetings, and things like that. So we've under enhancements, not a requirement, but we've always talked about this twinning, but we do need some funds to move this file along. So that's why it's under the enhancements of $2,500. Enterprise Renfrew County on page 73 of your committee package, very self-supporting. Again, Melissa did a great job highlighting some of the things they do. It's the flow through, the support they do for small businesses, starter company, summer company, things like that. We're very happy that the province has given us funding for 2024 and 25. No increases. So it's a challenge for us, and what you see here is of $22,000 and $848 is a line item where we're taking from reserves. Believe it or not, way back when, 2013 and 14, and then from 2014 and 2019, any unspent monies, the province allowed us to put this into reserves. And so to make this division whole, we're recommending that we take these monies from reserves to make this division whole for $22,000. So the province has approved this. This is nothing nefarious, just one of those things. We do have a reserve account. It's not an unlimited reserve. I'm looking at the numbers. As of December 31st, 2022, we had approximately $96,000 in this reserve account to move forward, but we're asking to move that out of reserves of $22,000. So again, not unlimited. We have about 4 or 5 years left of the reserves based on the expenditures to date.
Any comments, questions on Enterprise Center? I see none. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. So OVTA, it's basically a status quo. What you see here is a very small line item. It's still fulsome. It's $300,000, what we're talking about. We do receive funds from the County of Renfrew and the City of Pembroke. We do have 3 full-time staff, but they do provide, as you can see in the committee reports, a very valuable service for a number of initiatives. They're still working on the culinary tourism strategy workforce, the Tap and Cork route website, things like that as we move forward in 2024. So a very status quo budget for the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association as we move forward.
Thank you. Any comments, questions on that small section? I see none, so go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Thanks, Chair. So under planning, a number of enhancements, a number of cost-saving measures. Again, as a reminder to this committee, under the planning division, it's 8.5 full-time staff. So what you see in the salary line item includes my staff, my salary. Half of our AA, Evelyn at the back, comes from the planning division salary line item. Again, we do receive some funds, but they're not cost recovery funds. So when we talk about severances and subdivisions, a lot of work has been completed by staff, but not in a cost recovery methodology. We're working towards that, as Bruce did 2023, increasing some of the fees, again, but not in a cost recovery process. We do have currently, and what you see in blue under that column for the possible savings, last year, we budgeted for $25,000 for a contract services for a part-time planner. We've engaged with a part-time planner for the past number of months. It's working out very well, but as a possible 3% meet, to remove that contract services out of the line item. I don't think it's necessary, but again, this is for discussion to meet our budgetary targets. We hired this person because we are behind in our severances because of lack of staff. It's a challenge to get staff to the County of Renfrew and to hire staff. We still have a vacant position. Bruce Howarth and the HR team have had multiple interviews. We haven't found the right candidate yet. I know local municipalities are in the same boat. They're trying to hire planning staff, and it's a challenge. And that's why you see further on, under the enhancements, a business case to start the process. To start the process of having summer students, co-op students in place in the County of Renfrew. And that's what you see here in the yellow box. The cost to have co-op students within Renfrew County, to get that flow of new students, junior planners in the process. It worked well with us in the past. Unfortunately, the person went to a different municipality quite quickly after they had some, I'm not looking at you, Warden. But it did work out well, though. This person came from the school, we gave them experience for them to move on. It helps the pool of planners within Ontario or Eastern Ontario. So it's a positive thing. It's not a necessity. It really isn't. Bruce has done a good job explaining this through different committees last year, but there is a cost to that, and that's why you see in the committee package, item number 5 in my departmental report is the business case for this, for the co-op students to move forward. So maybe I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments, questions on, yes, Councillor from Town of Petawawa?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. And now that we've gone through all the different departments there, I really appreciate your efforts to find some cost-saving measures to bring it down to the 3%. But I'm sensing a little bit of a reluctance to do any of those cost-saving measures. So if I could just ask, if we didn't do any of those cost-saving measures, what would the percentage increase be? And if we were to add all of those budget enhancements, what would the percentage increase be?
I'd love to answer that, but I'll pass that off to Daniel, the math numbers, the numbers.
Thank you, Jason, and through you, Chair. If every committee across the County of Renfrew were to follow that same approach, the County of Renfrew's levy increase would be 11.89% to achieve that baseline budget, and then another 4.7% for the enhancements corporation-wide. Something on the order of 15% if you choose to say yes to everything. Yeah, well, this committee is quite small when compared to the county levy as a whole. So this committee, if this committee says yes to everything and all the others follow along with all reductions, not too bad. Just slightly over, I think it's about 4%, not too bad.
So that was corporate-wide, but what if we're just talking about the development and property budget alone, like in a silo? And I get that if one gets to do it, that all the others will want to do it as well, but...
So yes, if the development and property, I'll say the development and property proposed pressures or reductions are total $130,000, which is roughly, we'll say $500,000 is about a 1% levy increase, so that's a 0.2 of a levy percent increase. And the enhancements are $70,000, so 0.2 to 0.3% of a levy increase.
Thank you.
Councillor from Town of Arnprior.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's on the last item was travel for 20,000. With our Zen City being Zen City now that we're on the computer most of the time, does our travel time, would that be reduced in any way? Thank you.
Zen City is more for public engagement, so it wouldn't impact any travel items in the departmental report. So Zen City is just a platform, a web application platform to supply information to the public. What you saw with the Lee and Douglas build is just an information gathering and an information sharing platform, if that answers your question. Oh.
Sorry, I'll just chime in.
Yeah,
Sorry, because it's in front of me. If I can share through you, I believe what you're talking about, 20,000 on the planning slide. Mr. Howarth and his team of planners regularly attend your municipalities, the municipalities they service, and this allows them, this is a budget line item for us to provide service to ratepayers in their backyards as opposed to bringing them into the county offices. This has been a very successful endeavor over the last 2 years or so, and that's why that line item, not everything can be done by Zoom, unfortunately.
Thank you. I get it now, but my vision was that with the Zen City, we weren't going to the different places anymore. If you're doing, there's no more public meetings, so we didn't have to be there. But I understand our staffing are going to the different places now. That I didn't remember. Thank you.
Councillor from Laurentian Valley.
Thank you, Chair. Following up on the percentage increases for county-wide and then for the department, what would it actually equate to in tax dollars for the average property?
An excellent question, and if I can provide it county-wide, because I didn't calculate it specifically for DNP. Just one moment, I will find that. If all of the baseline budget items are approved, the annual county levy for the median property, which is $205,000 of assessment, will increase from $802 to $895. So that's a $93 increase. If you approve the budget accepting only level 1 reductions, it's a $65 increase. Accepting only level 2 reductions is a $44 increase. And with all reductions, level 1, 2, and 3, meeting that 3% target is a $23 increase. And all of the enhancements combined would add an additional $37 to the median property assessment over and above that $800 median assessment. Now, the bulk of those enhancements are a somewhat unique proposal that we're coming to next, which is maybe somewhat misleading in the way it's presented, but we'll see. We'll walk you through with the first of, I believe it's coming up in every committee here on out, and it's possibly has offset funding, but we don't know what that is, so we haven't accounted for it. So that's possibly a misleading enhancement number.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So again, the recommendation has been moved and seconded. Oh, sorry.
If I may, Chair, before we read the recommendations again and have a vote, we do have one more slide that we talked about. I talked about earlier in the presentation. So, and this is where we talked about a tri-departmental discussion, and that's why we have Chief Nolan at the back. He's walking forward, Acting Director Andrea Patrick. We do, and through Craig and through the senior leadership team, thought this would be the best way to propose some initiatives moving forward under enhancements. And even though it's coming through the Community Services Committee as a recommendation, and it has implications to this department, it has implications to health and the paramedic program, and our Renfrew County Housing Corporation divisional programs also. So what you see here is a special project called the Homelessness, Housing, Mental Health, and Addiction Hub. I've highlighted, I'm being selfish here, I've highlighted the individual line items that impact the D&P and the bricks and mortar of Renfrew County Housing Corporation. And so I'll go through my kind of line items as the enhancements as we move forward. We all know there's a housing crisis within Canada, Ontario, and Renfrew County. We do know there's a mental health capacity issue here in Renfrew County and beyond. Even yesterday, when the city of Edmonton, Alberta, did an emergency response to their homelessness and housing issue, is very well attended and is a crisis situation for them for housing. I'll kind of go through some line items and justifications of what we're talking about here on my aspect, and then pass it off to Andrea, then pass it off to Chief Nolan. The first item, which was discussed and talked about here at DNP and at County Council, the idea to have shovel-ready projects for housing initiatives. Bruce Howarth talked about it, myself talked about it, and so did CAO Craig Kelly. The idea of setting aside funds, approximately, you see there, $150,000, to get properties that the County of Renfrew own shovel-ready. We know that the province and the federal government will be issuing grants and monies for housing initiatives, and we want to be ready. A lot of the times the grants are contingent on these projects to be house or project ready, I mean shovels in the ground faster. And these monies will help us move the yardsticks along on 3 or 4 different items, locations within the County of Renfrew that the county owns the lands. I think we've talked about Renfrew County Place, we've talked about Miramichi Lodge, Bonnechere Manor for different initiatives, but this is where we want to talk about, as an enhancement, $150,000 to move that initiative along. Again, it came from DNP, but now we're talking about in this one slide under Community Services. Any questions, if I may, Chair? I'll go back to you if there's any questions about that one.
Questions, comments? Councillor from Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, could it be made available to us, a map with all the county-owned lands, just so we're aware of what might be possible, I guess?
Through you, Chair. So we do have that information. We have interactive maps that highlight these different properties, whether they're vacant or not. We can just highlight they're county-owned, whether it's, again, directly Renfrew County or Renfrew County Housing Corporation. We can supply that to you and to the public if need be. We can also tease out that information through GIS for municipally owned lands, if that's a wish. And as part of our housing summit that I mentioned earlier on under the real estate division budget review, the housing summit, that's one of the topics we want to talk about. Can we incentivize developers by highlighting these properties that could be, again, could be, we have our process in place, but could be used for housing developments. So yes, we can.
Councillor from McNabb Braeside.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I'm very pleased to see a special project dealing with this issue, which, covers a lot of issues, but it speaks to the social safety net and social fiber. And so, just one specific question about this, though. I was just wondering if we could get a little more background on the Safe Start Reserve, what the history of that was, and what it was originally designed for, and what the conditions in and around that are.
Through you, Chair. So we're not quite there. We'll get to there. Pardon me? Yeah. So at the end, we'll talk about the possibilities of where we're going to take funds from to pay for this. But I'm just on line item number 1, the first red line item.
Okay, jumping ahead.
Sorry about that and the miscommunication. The second 4 items are specifically for the bricks and mortar of our Renfrew County Housing Corporation assets. We provided updates to this committee and County Council a number of times under closed conditions, in the sense of providing information, direct information. We do know we have issues with the age of our buildings. We do know that we have issues with some of our tenants and the mental well-being of some of our tenants because of the conditions of the buildings we have. We do know that we have vacancies. Right now we have 30 to 40 units that need to be upgraded or maintained or fixed to allow new tenants to be moved in. That has never happened in the past. I think it's a combination of the conditions of the units when people move out. It's a combination of the actual age of the buildings. We're receiving more and more notifications of things failing within our units, whether it's a hot water tank or a furnace, which is creating pressures on our maintenance staff. Right now we have 13 full-time staff, 2 part-time staff for maintenance and custodial staff. What you see here in the proposal, increasing to 2 new or additional maintenance staff to help out with this. I'm going to say we should be upstaffing or right staffing our Renfrew County Housing Corporation assets. It was talked about before my time. In 2019, before COVID hit, there's early discussions with committees about upstaffing. COVID have changed things. I don't want to blame COVID, but it is a factor as we move forward. So that's why you see here 2 additional staff for maintenance as part of our portfolio to maintain. Keep in mind, at the end of this year, we're also increasing our number of units from 1,020, additional 9 units because of the new build at Lee and Douglas that needs to be maintained, and a duplex at 202 Cecil. So that's another pressure we're facing. That's why we need these additional staff, or the proposal to have 2 additional maintenance staff. Also, what you'll see here on the second bullet down under red is changing some of the classifications for from the custodial staff to maintenance staff to realize some of the work they could be doing to kind of move these vacant units into units that are ready for people. The continuum of care between the paramedic program and the front line, what they see on the streets, through Andrea's team, for the tenants, and for us, for the bricks and mortar. This is why there's a continuum of care for these individuals as we move forward, and that's why there's a pressure to have it within 3 departments. Also, what we're talking about here is historically we've shared an AA, administrative assistance with community services. We realize with the workload moving forward, we need our dedicated AA, and that's why you see here in their last kind of red bullet on this slide to have a full-time AA for specifically, not a shared position we have in the past, but a dedicated AA for the real estate division and Renfrew County Housing Corporation division. Last but not least is I do believe that wasn't highlighted. I missed that one. Sorry, Craig. Underneath that, the AA is the Building Infrastructure Coordinator. We realize we're going through millions of dollars of tenders throughout the year. We do need additional support to push these contracts through, whether it's a new roof, balconies, et cetera, et cetera. The pressure is there. To have a building infrastructure coordinator is paramount for us, including the AA. This is a bit of a misnomer for this position. We're also calling this an inspector position. In the past, community services would inspect units every year. Again, going back to COVID, because of the restrictions, we could not inspect units. And now we're realizing the effects of not inspecting these units. We're behind the 8 ball. We're 3 years behind the 8 ball of inspecting units. We're reducing staff, or we'd like to increase the staff to have this building infrastructure coordinator / inspector to get out there, to get out in front, to move this file along. So when we see issues before it happens, that will help us in the long run. When we see if there's any mold or any hoarding issues, we can address it further instead of reacting to it as they move out. So that's why we see a number of items in this specifically for RCHC and real property highlighted in red and for this committee. And if I could, Chair, I'm going to pass it off to Andrea to talk about some of her line items, if I could.
Yes, that would be great. Please, Andrea, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Brose, and through you to this committee. Good afternoon, members of committee. As Mr. Davis has spoken about, I think as a senior leadership team, we've housed kind of together some of these items that are impacting multiple departments. We all are aware and seeing in our communities the levels of homelessness and mental health challenges and addictions rising. And certainly there's a lot of complexities and no single solution, but we've tried to identify as a senior leadership team some of the initiatives that we believe will help to address this issue. So from the Community Services Department, the second item on the chart is the Community Housing Coordinator. This is a contract position that was brought through to the Renfrew County Housing Corporation Board in the summer and got into place by October. So really just started in the last quarter of the year. The position was created and brought to the board as to address the large backlog of cases with the Landlord and Tenant Board. So as Mr. Davis was speaking about during COVID, of course, we know there was a lot of restrictions, and all landlords, including Renfrew County Housing Corporation, were restricted from serving any L1 or N5 notices or proceeding with any evictions due to either social issues or rent non-payment. And as we moved through COVID and some of these restrictions were lifted, it created a really large backlog of cases. And the province has put some attention towards cleaning up that backlog. And as a result, the cases are starting to come forward more quickly, which is positive. However, it's a lot of time and resources for our staff to be filing the necessary paperwork and presenting at the landlord and tenant board. So one of the things that we had noticed and brought to Renfrew County Housing Board's attention was the rising levels of arrears, and really hoping that this position will help to really do some mitigation around those rising levels of arrears, ensure that those arrears are accurate. We have had some changes brought through to the Renfrew County Housing Board around some arrears policy changes, ensuring that those arrears are accurate based on the information and not just on information that may have been missing that put tenants at a higher level of rent. So we're really looking to address some of those issues and have a staff person that will continue to work towards bringing these cases through the tribunal and then to a conclusion that is satisfactory with respect to these units and other available units, which is of course then may allow the movement and the turnover of units more quickly. The other item relating to community services is on line number 4, and that's the homelessness coordinator. This is a position that is recommended in order to work really closely with the emergency services team and to the initiatives that Mr. Nolan will speak to here in a moment. Currently, we do not have any dedicated staff resources in community services working with homelessness. We have many staff that are working with homelessness as part of their Ontario Works duties and caseloads, but really feeling that we need a dedicated staff to help with the coordination of these efforts and moving that forward. So I'll stop there, Chair, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and maybe I'll just have Mr. Nolan do his presentation on this item, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly from a paramedic perspective, but also I think where we have the tri-departmental view on this, there's a significant opportunity from a population health perspective to be able to positively affect the people who are most vulnerable in our community. And mental health unto itself reaches into many, if not most, families in Renfrew County. Paramedics are treating people with significant mental health related issues, and we've seen a significant dramatic rise in the past 24 months as it pertains to mental health related crisis in the community. And I think it's important to speak to that separate and distinct from addictions, and you could speak to addictions separate and distinct from homelessness. It's not interwoven to the degree that it may appear. However, the interventions are very similar, and I think that that's important because this is not to stigmatize any population. This is about making sure that we have the social determinants of health recognized in our planning and in our program delivery. And it was following AMO that the CAO brought forward an ask that we lean into this issue and that we find ways to be able to more appropriately address the challenges related to mental health, addictions, and homelessness. And I think it's critically important that as Mr. Davis has brought forward the issues related to housing, that truly is inextricable for those who are homeless or precariously housed, those who are within our social network within the county, but also people living independently, otherwise doing well, who are finding themselves in this post-pandemic era or intra-pandemic era, experiencing significant mental health related crisis. I can confirm that our suicide rate is rising quickly within the county. Our opioid addiction rate is risen exponentially. We have unprecedented rates of opioid-related deaths in Renfrew County, perilously approaching 40 for the last 12 months in Renfrew County, and these are not normal times. And for us to continue to service these issues with normal levels of service and the way that we've been doing business really is not addressing some of the root cause, such as how people are housed, how they're supported from a mental health perspective, how paramedics are responding, and I think of critical importance, having a nimbleness within the community to lean into this population so that they truly feel supported. So the way that we've come together is to create both an east and west, for lack of a better name. I could call it a Pembroke and a Renfrew, but then someone would get upset with me. So we're going to call it an east and a west for illustrative purposes, but that we would have two teams in Renfrew County, pairing up a community paramedic as well as a social worker or crisis worker that would allow us to be able to respond to 911 calls, allow us to engage known vulnerable populations in a proactive way to prevent those 911 calls from occurring, and to ensure that the people leaning into community service-based programs also have visible transactional opportunities to work with county staff to make sure that we can either stabilize their conditions or improve their conditions. And I don't think it's a stretch to also suggest that by doing that, we can then also lessen some of the challenges and costs that we're experiencing from a social housing perspective, and be able to stabilize and engage people in their homes, which happen to be county assets. And I think that that's critically important to have staff in those units when people need them. So I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. And before I take questions, because I know we have some new members on the committee, just for some additional information, and I just asked Mr. Davis if when the county took over the additional housing units in the town of Arnprior, and how many units, do you remember offhand? I asked him if there was any upstaffing at that time. And there was not.
There was not. There was town of Renfrew. We took over Opeongo Housing Corporation. Yeah. We did not add staff to the...
So again, that's adding to some of the pressures with the upkeep of units. And even when I was chairing the Community Services Committee, this was not something that wasn't spoken about then. As early as 2018, it was brought to committee that there was certainly a challenge with the upkeep of some of the housing units. And as a result, we are now at a position where there's between 30 to 40 vacant units that require repairs. So I know there's a price tag on the bottom of $2 million, but at the same time, we're not, it's not like this is additional monies. In a lot of ways, these monies are already being spent, but being spent in different ways, and that could be because these units are not able to take new clients or tenants, that we're paying for motel and hotel accommodations to house some of these individuals, as well as Mr. Davis has talked about our maintenance people who are more than just cleaners and custodians. They actually bring a whole set of skills and are doing a lot of the renovations, which are more cost-effective and more timely than trying to get contractors in to do some of these repairs and maintenance. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. And Mr. Kelly, you had a comment.
I'm just trying to put a bow on this for committee in a succinct fashion, because there's really no decision of this committee to be made today on this, at least, but open for questions. Was through strategic planning, through conversations, of course, and Chief Nolan talked about the hub. All these things have been talked about as initiatives you want to see move forward. As Mr. Burke has suggested, we put them on a slide. We put them together in one area to talk about the housing issue, if you will. A lot of it created because of the pandemic pressures we had and weren't able to get into buildings. So again, we just we put it all into one encapsulated slide. There are in the margins ways that we might be able to fund it through different reserves. We are going to Roma next week to talk about, or to request monies for the hub model and some other funding for some housing initiatives. So in absence of that, this is a major enhancement. I mean, $2 million is a 4%. 4% on the levy. Well, HPP funding is going to cover some of this, but overall about a 4% touch. So again, no decisions to be made today, but definitely open for questions on how we possibly could look at funding avenues. But this will be heard again in health tomorrow, and again in community services, and maybe in finance and admin. So you will hear this more often than once.
Thank you. So opening it up for questions, Councillor from Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, these are definitely much needed measures that we need here in Renfrew County to deal with our new reality. And I'm looking at your possible funding measures here to fund these initiatives, but that would just be for the 2024 year. And I'm assuming if all of these are implemented and they're effective, that we would want to fund these going forward year after year. So I'm just wondering what we're looking at to fund these year after year. And just a specific question about the response teams. I'm just looking at the numbers for the vehicle and the crisis worker. Is there supposed to be an S there, or is that just for one crisis worker and one vehicle? Just want an explanation on the amounts that I see there.
Mr. Kelly.
I'll wander down the road and people will follow me. I think, as has been the norm with some projects, and I will use VTAC as a project, and Mike will walk with me apparently on this one. I don't know, you're right, these things won't be solved. If I look at the hub model or the warming center, the homelessness issue in many of these areas will not be solved within the year, I can't imagine. We hope to make some progress on it. Personally, I believe that this is something that the province needs to fund. This is not something that needs to fall on the municipal taxpayer, but we need to start it with a pilot project somewhere. And this is what the ask will be: is we are going to do this. We are such a geographically large county that we need to do this mobile hub format and work on a pilot project. So using, if I take the Safe Restart Fund, which was meant to assist us with pressures coming out of the pandemic. Ultimately, that's some of the wording that was attributed to that. So if we were to suggest that would push us forward for a year and a half on a pilot project, that would help us. But again, we're asking for more dollars. Other things like the assistance in admin support, the inspector, all these things, yes, you're right. These will be 1-year funds, and I think Daniel talked to this at the beginning. Some of these issues we can fund for this year, but they would be pressures moving forward in next year. I mean, that's the reality, is that in 2025 you will be hit with another pressure to pay for these things. It will be an increase to the levy. I don't know if I'll ask. I see Chief Nolan.
If I could, thank you, Mr. Chair, and respecting the warden, I know he had his hand up, but if I could piggyback on to Mr. Kelly's comments specific to the S or the no S and some of the questions there. That's an annualized salary cost, and by having somebody on 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's dramatically greater than having a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday kind of person. But the reality is that working with Andrea, that this would give us the flexibility to be able to shift start the crisis worker for each of the two teams, and the paramedic, community paramedic for each of the two teams to the demand of the day. So it'd probably be an afternoon evening shift when we see the vast majority of these types of experiences, and that's the utility of standardizing to a 12-hour shift, but then changing the hours. So that's why the numbers, when you look at the crisis worker, those are hours associated with a crisis worker. That's not one crisis worker's cost. That's what it takes to have a crisis worker on 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, which represents multiple crisis workers as part of that exercise. The vehicle is a total cost, so it could be a 1/5 of that cost if you amortized it over 5 years, but that's what the upfront cost to us would be, depending on the funding model, and that would be the same for the capital purchase. However, the materials and supplies would be the annualized cost. So you could do a 1/5 on the vehicle and on the capital, recognizing that it's likely to be greater than a 1-year project. I think what we're into, unfortunately, is a bit of a new norm. And as was said previously, and Mr. Kelly, the opportunity here is to lessen the pressures on community services, on the 911 side of the paramedic service, on the hospitals and primary care, and right across the system, so that people can get more appropriate care in times of crisis where they want to be met, and not simply taken to the hospital with an expectation that somebody else is going to fix it. And when we look at other programs such as Ottawa, who has a shade of this type of program, they've realized a 60% reduction in transportation to the emergency department from people in mental health crisis as a result of having the expertise of a social worker from community services, as well as a community paramedic to care for them in their own home. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Service, can you turn off your mic, or did you have a supplementary? And the warden, please, and then Councillor from McNabb.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Chief Nolan hit it when he talked about the savings to the provincial treasury, and also the strain on the hospital system. And so just some numbers that I found yesterday. People that are homeless for 6 months or less or more, homelessness, they have 3 or more health challenges, 3% for the people that are homeless under 6 months, and 24% for people that are homeless for over 6 months. And 7% of the population also had 2 or more health issues, 43% of the over 6 months. So that meets with the outline when this project was put together, was that people that are homeless don't look after their health, and that's a primary issue. And in Toronto, they followed 51 unhoused people with no fixed address for 6 months, and they had 1,500 visits to the ED, to the emergency department, in that period of time. So just in terms of what it's able to, what it uses up. Their homeless population had been to the emergency department 31% of the time in the last year, and they were 80% more likely to use the service. And just one more number that I found interesting. Putting someone in the hospital ward for a month is $32,500. Provincial jail costs $15,000 a month. Shelters cost $7,500 a month. And supportive housing costs $3,500 a month. So the hub model, whatever the per month cost, is considerably less than than those numbers. And so those are the kinds of things those are the kinds of reality with dealing with the homeless population or the precariously housed population. Thank you.
Councillor from McNabb, Braeside.
Okay, thank you. So, once again, thanks to senior staff for bringing this to our attention and being very proactive. As disturbing as the statistics that we heard are, it's very important that it be faced, and thank them for bringing forward this plan. I agree with the CAO that there really needs to be provincial help to sustain this sort of program year after year. The possible funding from the 2 reserves there that just did a quick check, and that would empty both of those reserves. So I share the same sort of questions as my colleague from Petawawa, is how can this be sustained? So we look forward to the meetings with the province and down that road. I'm just curious if there's any quantification in the budget elsewhere where the savings that we all know will take place when we're taking a proactive approach, right? That if you wait till the problem is too big to handle, it just gets very expensive, I guess, from a financial standpoint of view, let alone the social costs. But is there any quantification within the budget that could reduce this number?
Mr. Burke?
Thank you, Chair. At this point, no. I think most of the savings would be in the hospital sector, which is not part of the county, or potentially in, as Chief Nolan said, frontline paramedics. But until we can get that running and get a trial going and see that, we wouldn't consider reducing our frontline paramedic staffing unless it's extremely successful or anything like that. But at this point, no. This is just let's throw all of our ideas at the wall, and this is them, and there's all of our ideas for funding it, and bring it to County Council for do they want to do it in whole, in part, on a trial basis, any range of options. The $2 million is envisioning a full year, full staff, which is not maybe necessarily what will be the end result. Might be more of a trial basis, but there it is. It's for your consideration. Actually, in the community services budget is where the line item is, but it will appear again in almost every committee.
Supplementary?
Yeah, just one quick follow-up, much more of a detail. Just I'm just curious, is there a decent supply of crisis workers available in the labor marketplace, or is that one of those positions that is generally difficult to fill?
Chief Nolan, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think there's a retired one behind us who'd love to be a part of the program. Yeah. But because we're not a nepotistic organization, that's in jest. And my understanding is that there are crisis worker availability within the system, and I think that this, being innovative, being novel as a program, would be something that would be attractive to expertise that we have within the county, within that grouping. I think crisis worker is a term that we can all, identify with in one way or another. I think that how someone is a crisis worker, by definition, may have some flexibility associated with it. I don't believe it's a protected term per se, so much as we already have expertise in community services with people who work with the homeless population and within the housing department. So I think that there's an inherent expertise there. Certainly, Pembroke Regional Hospital would be an important contributor to this conversation as well, to get the right fit within the intent of the program. And I think Daniel said it well. The intention here is to get started and to continuously learn, as we have in other innovative programs within the county, and continue to refresh that. So we may, you may start off with a social worker. We may end up with somebody who's got mental health and addictions related activities, or maybe somebody with expertise in getting the right people into the housing opportunities that both Jason and Andrea provide within the county, and I think that that's critically important. If I could do my follow-on, if that's possible, Mr. Chair.
I'm just conscious of the time because we have another meeting starting at 1, so yeah, if you can keep it short and concise.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and characteristically, I'll try and keep it pretty tight for you. So, but I do want to raise a point, because I don't want it to be left with the intention that by doing this program, we're going to save money in some other budget. And I think Daniel spoke very well to it. But I think that the notion of savings in the social sector and the health sector is really about how do we address an issue that we know is going to have an exponential future cost or future demand, not only in relation to the program itself, but what are the knock-on or the unintended consequences of leaving something unaddressed. So, are we going to be cutting an ambulance because of this, or are we going to be, reducing staff to do this, to pay for this? No. But what we can tell you is we're standing at the foot of a mountain of an issue, and if we do nothing, there will be real cost going forward because demand for service is going to increase, and that is what serves up an opportunity for department heads to come back and say, we have a real problem, and now it's really expensive. How do we address this issue now so that we don't have something happen? And that's very difficult to measure. Right, it's almost impossible to measure what didn't happen versus what will. And our goal here is to have, again, a novel, innovative program that addresses an issue that will have real cost. So our goal in saving is about reducing or blunting a demand curve that has already begun. This conversation's been going on since last summer, and the crisis that we're standing in front of. Our goal would be to put ourselves out of business and not need this intervention if we can stabilize the care. So when I talk about almost 40 people dead this year in Renfrew County as a result of opioid addictions, there's an exponentially greater 911 response to giving Narcan and resuscitating people every single day in Renfrew County. If we can get to that population and reduce those 911 calls, then those paramedics are available for everything else that's going on, and I'm not coming back saying, I need a really expensive solution to a problem that we knew was coming. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. And just a reminder to committee, this is not an action item now. This conversation will happen at the various other committees as well as our county council meeting and our budget meetings. So I think I will leave it at that. And the recommendation is on the floor to just approve the moving of the Development Property Committee budget recommendations to the budget workshop. It has been moved and seconded. So I will call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. And Director Davis has 2 more items, so I know he's going to have to speak fast.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry to speak faster than normal. I may not go into much detail just because we talked a little bit about it during the budget discussion. Going back to actually the committee report on page 10, we do have 2 business cases. On item number 5, the business case for the co-op student planner, which was talked about during the divisional departmental budget. Excuse me, that the Development and Property Committee recommends the inclusion of a co-op student planner in the budget for 2024, and further that this be brought forward to the January 24th, 2024 budget workshop for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. You've heard the recommendation. Moved by Councillor from Greater Madawaska, seconded by Councillor from Horton. And I believe we have spoken to the background. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Chair. Last item in the report, item number 6, a business case for a maintenance person for additional hours for the real estate division. And the recommendation states that the Development and Property Committee recommends the addition of 1 day per week to the part-time maintenance person position to be funded via paramedic service internal charge. And further that this be brought forward to the January 24th, 2024 budget workshop for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. You've heard the recommendation. Moved by Councillor from Petawawa, seconded by Councillor from Town of Arnprior. Comments, questions? All in favor? And that's carried as well. And I will need a mover and a seconder to adopt the report as a whole. Moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor from Horton. Comments, questions? All in favor? That's carried. Is there any new business items? I see none. We have no closed meetings at this time, so the date of the next meeting will be Tuesday, February the 13th, 2024. And I will need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Moved by Councillor from Laurentian Valley, seconded by Councillor from McNabb Braeside. All in favor? That's carried. And we are adjourned with 2 minutes to spare.